Yep. Inside, I want to kill myself. We are on an 0-7 run over the last 2 days. After tonight was just complete bullshit. So that's how I'm going to start off this show. Horrible Sunday, 1-5. I don't even know what to tell you about that. I just don't want to do this anymore. I have never seen anything like this, man. With the slump continuing, 2 straight losses, not a good day at all. 0-4. I just have not had a good season, man. What can this slump that I'm on? The slump continues. I've reached a new peak, actually. With I'm gonna burn my Bruins hat, man. I don't know what is going on with the Bruins. March 8th, is that what it is? I don't even know. It's March 9th, I think. Who even knows, man? I don't know what day it is anymore. I don't even know what day it is anymore, man. Back with you after the worst day that I could possibly have. Back with you, as I always am. Until I die, at least. 0-2 yesterday, and yesterday did not go well for me. 0-5. The worst month that I've ever had in my 18 years doing this. I don't know what to even tell you about this anymore. Broke the slump yesterday as the slump discontinues. The slump continues. Somebody fucking kill me, please. I don't even know what I should do at this point other than potentially end it all. What's up, everybody? It's Toad back with you, Better Off Dead. This is college football week 8. Is that even what it is? I don't even know, man. I think it's probably week 8. We got one college football play right with Louisville. Good thing I added that late because they won outright. So if you guys got that, the price crashed down to 10.5. Didn't even matter. They won outright. So hopefully people did get on that one. Money line and spread. That was a winner. The Chicago Blackhawks, the Blackhawks, decided to fuck me by blowing a 2-0 lead and then losing in a shootout in the end of the game, which it was still the right call, I think, to go with them as the underdog. The market shifted to be in favor of them. And then I think it might have shifted back a little bit. I don't even know. Whatever. I think it was the right spot. I think it was still the right move. It was a slight winning day. Yeah, I mean, I'll take it, I guess, but I'm still kind of pissed about it. But because of the money line, I always say sprinkle the money line a little bit when you play an underdog, man. An underdog of that capacity with Louisville, just maybe like 3% of that bet, maybe on the money line, and that gets you that little bit of extra. And then, of course, the Blackhawks being an underdog play, I recommend playing it to win the same amount that you're playing other like minus 110 bets to win, so you put a little bit less money on that. So it was a winning day slightly. Move on to college football here, man. I mean, this is a huge college football slate. It seems like it's bigger than usual. Just the amount of games, the amount of, I don't know, seeming top 25 matchups. I don't know. I do have the San Jose State game on here right now. It was a 4th down play at the end of the game. San Jose State just attempted a Hail Mary and lost the game by 5, so they did not cover. I think it looked like they probably should have covered. They were covering a lot of that game. Not one of my plays, but I gave it out as a lean. North Carolina football. I'm going to switch to North Carolina here as that game is on. Cal was winning by a touchdown, and I think they're up 4 at the half. But let's get into today, man. Nobody's even in the chat right now, so whatever. I'm talking to myself. That's cool. It's late night. I don't want this to be another 2-hour show, but maybe it will be. Let's jump right into it, man. I'm going to have 4 more plays. I've had to whittle the list down because I do have some other opinions, which I'll kind of tell you, like, as far as how strong my opinions are. I'll try to make that clear, I guess. Let's jump right into it, man. We have a top 25 matchup. Multiple of them, I guess, right at noon. Or no, one of them right at noon. Number 10, LSU at number 17, Vandy in this SEC matchup here on ABC at noon. What typically would not be a huge matchup in the past is now because Vandy is good. Both of these teams are 5-1. They're both one-loss SEC teams right now. LSU, for some reason, even though they brought Nussmeier back, their offense has actually been pretty bad this year. They're a better defensive team than offensive team, which has not been the case over the last couple of years. They have the better defense in this matchup. Vandy's defense isn't terrible, though, and Vandy has the better offense in this matchup. It is a revenge spot, as I believe LSU beat Vandy by, I think, 7 or something like that. It was not a blowout, I don't think, last year. Well, let me look real quick. I don't want to get that wrong. Yeah, they won 24-17 last year at home. So it's a little bit of a revenge spot for Vandy. I mean, it's a big game for both teams, but it is a really big game for Vandy because typically they just get annihilated in the past by some of these top-tier SEC teams. But Vandy, if they want a shot to try to beat LSU, which I don't think they've done in, I don't know, maybe in program history, I don't even know, this might be their chance to do it, man. I mean, they're actually a favorite in this game, so they might be able to do it. LSU isn't exactly in a terrible spot necessarily, though. I mean, they came out of the bye after they had that tough game against Ole Miss, played South Carolina, didn't really play them that well, only beat them 20-10, kind of a bad offensive showing on both sides there. You could say that it was a good defensive showing, but the way South Carolina's offense has been, I mean, maybe it wasn't that good as far as LSU's defense. Although their defense has been playing well generally. I mean, they held this Ole Miss offense in check, so that's a good sign. But now they're going to Vandy. They do have Texas A&M and Alabama in their next two games, so potentially a look-ahead spot. I mean, normally you wouldn't really think it's a look-ahead spot playing a ranked team, but those are both two top 10 teams and teams that have more weight behind their names. So it is possible that maybe LSU is maybe slightly looking ahead here. Vandy coming into this game, they're coming out of a bye, so they do have an extra week to prepare for this game. They did take their first loss last time out against Alabama. I mean, didn't really expect them to beat Alabama. I mean, of course they did last year, but that just meant Alabama was more motivated this time, wanting the revenge for that high-profile loss last year. Alabama got their revenge. Alabama is the better team of the two. I talk about how when a team loses, takes their first loss of the season like Vandy did, it does tend to have a bit of a hangover effect. I mean, that was a big game. You get up emotionally for it, but maybe they'll kind of get over that hangover effect a little bit because they do have an extra week to prepare for this. Might help them kind of fix some things. And it's still a big game. It's ABC. It's against LSU at home. High-profile game. Probably their biggest remaining game on the slate. I mean, Vandy still actually could potentially make the SEC title game. So it's a big game here, man. Neither of these teams want to take their second loss here. So, and then looking at what's going on in the market here, LSU is getting the money, surprisingly. The number went up a little bit on Vandy, up from 1.5 to 2. We have 53% of tickets. You'd think that LSU would be more public than that, though, and 65% of the cash on LSU. I kind of disagree with that. I mean, I kind of lean to Vandy. I think this is just it's a bigger motivational spot for Vandy, in my opinion, and I think the extra rest is actually going to be somewhat helpful in this spot. So slight lean to Vandy in this one for me. Certainly not going to be one that I'm going to give out a play on. There was something else I just had in my mind that I was going to say. Oh, yeah, well, with the rankings, right, because LSU's number 10 in the country, Vandy's number 17. It's kind of that ranking disparity thing going on again where the public you would think would be thinking, well, LSU, I mean, they always beat Vandy. They're the higher-ranked team. They're the more known quantity, the bigger name team. So you'd think that they would kind of tend to want to play LSU as the underdog here for those reasons. But maybe Vandy's offense is good looking enough right now, and LSU's has looked bad enough this year that the public actually isn't really holding that sentiment that much here. But for me, I would still lean to Vandy slightly there. Also at noon, we have number 12, undefeated, 6-0, Georgia Tech against Duke. At Duke, who is also undefeated. Duke's undefeated in the ACC. I mean, both teams are 3-0 in the ACC. Duke's two losses are both out of conference. And one of them, as I keep harping on, was Illinois, where Duke just had a ton of turnovers in the game and should have won that game probably. They dominated the game statistically. This is another interesting one because you see unranked Duke is a favorite against ranked Georgia Tech, who's ranked 12th in the country. Even though, yeah, I think Georgia Tech is a pretty good team. I think maybe the rankings makers have gone a little bit too far with Georgia Tech here now, man. I talk about this a lot when you see, it seems like we're seeing a situation like this every week where you have an unranked team in college football that's favored over a ranked team. And that's the odds makers telling you something different than what the rankings makers are telling you. The odds makers are telling you these teams are pretty evenly matched, whereas the rankings makers are making it seem like Georgia Tech is the way better team. Public is going to kind of lean that way slightly, even though we do see 53% of tickets on Duke, which kind of surprises me. I would think the public would be just running to take the points with a ranked, undefeated Georgia Tech team. 68% of the cash, though, on Duke. Duke has moved up from 2.5 to 3. I'm going to lean to Duke just because it is one of those rankings versus oddsmaker disparities here. I don't really see really much of a situation to call for it, but the money is still coming in on the Duke side as well. So I think it is still kind of a public fade to some extent if you do like Duke in this one. Georgia Tech, I mean, they haven't really played that difficult of a schedule, to be honest. I mean, their big win was the one over Clemson, but Clemson following that up, I think, with a loss to Syracuse. I mean, Clemson not maybe as good as we thought they were to start the season, man. I don't know. Maybe not that great. So that kind of takes some of the luster off of that win for Georgia Tech there. And since then, I mean, they haven't done great since then. I don't even know what I would say is their best win since then. I mean, last week against Virginia Tech, I guess. Virginia Tech was bad enough to start the season. They fired their coach, although they've been a bit better since then. But, I mean, it's crazy. Like, Georgia Tech just doesn't have any other great wins. Maybe at Colorado, I guess you could say. That was a difficult environment to go in and win. So they played well in that game. But their one other road game, which was in the ACC, they almost lost to a pretty bad Wake Forest team. So, although Wake Forest did, I think, play well the following week, maybe against Virginia Tech or something like that, although Virginia Tech's still a struggling team. I'm going around in loops here. But, yeah, Georgia Tech, I mean, their resume is not massively impressive, even though they are 6-0. They're having to go out on the road again, and they have not been quite as good on the road again. They did struggle, had to go into overtime against Wake Forest last time on the road, and Duke is a better team than Wake Forest. Duke, you know they're going to show up for this one. I mean, it's a ranked team coming into their place. Duke, yeah, I mean, their schedule isn't particularly impressive either. They played more road games. It was impressive they were able to win out on the West Coast in California in kind of dominant fashion in what should have been kind of a bad spot for them. And they are coming out of a bye. So they do have an extra week of rest here because they went into a bye after that. The problem is they did go into the bye on a good note with 3 straight wins. So I do talk about that. When a team goes into a bye on a good note like that, the bye tends to not be that helpful because you don't really have anything to work on because everything is working for you. Even though, yeah, they're going to try to prepare something for Georgia Tech, which crazy that Georgia Tech might be the game that they have more focus on despite having Clemson up next. So they have another bye in between those two games. Which is probably a helpful spot to have a bye for Duke there. But I do think Duke will show up. I mean, this is a ranked team. Of course, the last time they hosted a ranked team, they turned it over a ton of times and lost to Illinois. But I think they'll show up. I'll lean to Duke slightly again just because, mostly because of the oddsmaker versus ranking disparity there. 12:45 p.m. Eastern on SEC Network, number 14, Oklahoma at South Carolina. Oklahoma, they're in a spot where they took their first loss last week. So, again, could be a bit of a hangover spot. When a team takes their first loss, it can tend to hang them over a little bit. They can, in effect, kind of lose that game twice sometimes if it was a big game, and it was. So it's somewhat of a hangover spot here, in my opinion, for Oklahoma. And coming off their first loss of the season, that can also add to the hangover. But it was also the Red River rivalry, the Red River shootout against Texas, which was not even close to a shootout. And I told you guys, I gave out Texas on my show as a play. We got that right. I told you guys that the under was worth a look in that game as well, and that wound up also being correct. But Oklahoma coming off that game, I know it was a bad game for them. They only scored 6 points. Texas's defense is definitely for real. Their offense is another story, but you could argue that, well, because Oklahoma, the final score, they really just had a bad offensive game there. You could kind of argue that maybe they'll kind of bounce back from that because it was such a bad offensive performance. But then again, it was still a fairly close game. I think they were only down 7 fairly late in that game. And it was, again, a game you get up emotionally for against Texas. Huge game. So coming off that, I still don't like it. It's only going to be their second road game of the season. Although, granted, they did do well the first road game against Temple. They absolutely blew them out. And Temple, I took a loss on that one on the show with Temple. Temple's not really that bad of a team. But Oklahoma does also have big games up next. They got all the remaining games are against ranked teams with number 5 Ole Miss coming up next. And they got Tennessee, Alabama, Missouri, and LSU remaining. So Oklahoma has a very difficult remaining schedule, which kind of makes it a little bit of a sandwich-looking spot there. Or maybe they're even going to look ahead to a matchup against Ole Miss a little bit there. Although, on the other hand, you got to think that with a one-loss SEC team now, they kind of have to focus on this game because they're probably not going to end the season only with one loss with that difficult of a schedule remaining. South Carolina, they're going to get up for this game as well. They're going to get up for this game. Oklahoma might not, as I was saying. I was trying to find a reason why maybe they would, but Oklahoma, I do think they're less likely to get up for this game than South Carolina is. South Carolina, they actually fired their offensive line coach, even though I think their rushing attack has started improving a little bit recently, but for whatever reason, maybe to try to spark the team. I don't know what was going on there, but they fired their O-line coach. Their offense has been a problem. Their defense has actually been okay. They're coming off losing to LSU, but that was a high-profile game. It was a big game for South Carolina to have to try to go into LSU, try to get revenge on them. And they played fairly well, only losing 20-10. I think they were within 7 points pretty late in that game too. So not exactly a spot where I necessarily want to be on South Carolina coming off of that. They have to kind of put in that big effort, 2 straight games like that. I know it is a home game. They're hosting Oklahoma, so they still should get up for it. I still lean to South Carolina because I do think the spot is worse for Oklahoma. But the market is kind of disagreeing with that. Although it almost looks too easy to lay the points with Oklahoma. I mean, you got a ranked Oklahoma team, one-loss team, only laying 4.5 now here. So to me, I expected the public to be on Oklahoma. It's kind of weird to see 53% of the cash, or 53% of tickets, on South Carolina here, and 52% of the cash, which makes it look like South Carolina is a home public underdog, which I don't think could possibly really be the case here. I think that maybe we're going to see that market read shift a little bit come game time. I would lean to taking the points with South Carolina. It's also a very low total at 43.5, so that means the points are going to be more at a premium here. You have 2 teams that are pretty good defensively, with teams that might be a little bit more questionable offensively. So that I think is also part of the reason for the game being that low scoring, but also it would kind of make more sense to look towards taking the points when you think it's going to be kind of a defensive battle like that. 3:30 p.m. Eastern, CBS. We have undefeated number 1 in the country, Ohio State at Wisconsin, who is not doing well. Wisconsin has seen better days, man. They've seen better days. And the bottom has dropped out for them. Ohio State is probably indeed actually the number 1 team in the country. They're coming off a pretty big win against a team that's at least ranked in Illinois, although I've been talking about how I think Illinois is overrated. Ohio State did go in and they did cover, even though they didn't even get much through the air from their freshman quarterback, Sayin, in that game. He's been worse on the road for sure, man. Barely eclipsing 200 yards passing at Washington. And then last time out against Illinois, who I'm not really sure has a very good defense. He only threw for 166. So I don't know, man. Ohio State, I mean, they've struggled a little bit offensively on the road, it looks like. I haven't dug into that box score, which I should do, although I'm not going to give it a play on this one. I mean, I handicap these games. I'm just kind of like, I should dig into the box scores more than I do for some of these games. But when I kind of decide I'm not going to play the game, then I just don't dig into it that much further, although maybe I'm missing out on some things. If I had dug into the box score, maybe I would have seen something, which I'm going to tell you about one of those that I missed last week that could have been a winner for us, which I'll talk about in not too long of a period of time, because I think they're in a ranked matchup this week. But Illinois did have 3 turnovers in the game. They actually outgained Ohio State. So misleading final result there, man, where Ohio State won the game by 18. They actually got outgained, and they only won the game because Illinois turned the ball over so many times, which is kind of insane. So Ohio State actually didn't do that well. It looks like it was a good win on the scoreboard. They'll probably think that it was a good win. And they do have Penn State up next. It's after a bye, so that takes a little bit away from that. I know Penn State has fallen completely off. I know they're kind of a laughingstock right now, but that's still Ohio State versus Penn State. I mean, that is still a big matchup. I think that it does look kind of like a sandwich spot here to me, man. And we are looking at a second straight road game for Ohio State. We're looking at a third road game in 4 weeks as well. It is possible they just don't take Wisconsin totally seriously here, sandwiched in between 2 bigger games. Although, again, maybe the look ahead's a little bit less because, or less of an effect because they do have a bye coming up after this. Wisconsin, they're going to at least show up because it is Ohio State coming into their place. Wisconsin, they're coming off getting shut out by Iowa. I mean, that is obviously a terrible sign. This Wisconsin team has just been awful, man. They I think their quarterback got hurt, and then I don't even know I think they've had multiple quarterback injuries, and now they got Simmons at quarterback, and they just haven't been able to really do anything offensively. But the fact they're coming off getting shut out, even though I know Iowa is a very strong defense, 37-0 at home, that is totally embarrassing. So you've got to think Wisconsin is going to at least show up here. Like, I mean, they're out of it for the season, we know. I mean, they still have some chance maybe at making a bowl this year. It's going to be difficult, though. They're going to have to win 4 of their last 6 games. And they're not going to win it here, or they're probably not going to win at Oregon or at Indiana either. Maybe they can somehow pull off some sort of shocker. But when a team is in a situation like that, there are only certain games they're going to get up for the remainder of the season if they think they're just not going to hit their goals for the year. It's a game like this that they're going to get up for, though, with number 1 Ohio State coming into their house. So I would lean to taking the points with Wisconsin. You're getting a lot of points here, although you could have gotten the key number of 27 at one point earlier. It's down to 25. Still a huge number, though, and this total is unbelievably low, down to from 42.5 to 41. So it looks pretty tempting to take 25 points with a spread of 41, or a total of 41, excuse me. It's like, what do you think? Wisconsin's just not going to score in this game at all? I mean, I don't know, man. 83% of tickets, 92% of the cash on Ohio State. So the cash looks like it's coming in that way. There's no way that I would lay the points with Ohio State, though. I would take the points with Wisconsin or pass in this one, even at 25. I think with an extremely low total like that, it looks like there is some pretty decent value, at least in getting an amount of points like that. 3:30 p.m. Eastern still. Michigan State at Indiana. Peacock is airing this one. Michigan State has not won in the Big Ten yet this year. It's a down program, man. Michigan State, they just haven't been very good. Indiana, undefeated, and they've worked their way up to number 3 in the rankings, which I don't know if I totally buy it. I mean, they're winning against Illinois. I talked about how I think Illinois is overrated, so I don't know how much weight to put into that. I know they put up a ton of points in the game. They came back down to earth a little bit coming off of that. I gave out Iowa plus the points on my show there, and Iowa did indeed play defense and hold Indiana's offense in check to get the cover there. But Indiana went out to Oregon last week, and they pulled off a huge win over number 3 Oregon as an underdog. I did mention I leaned to Indiana on that one. I thought the spot was not really great for Oregon in that one, even though Indiana, it was still difficult for them to go out to an unfamiliar environment on the Pacific Coast and do that, although they did have a bye going into that one, although sometimes that bye will be a momentum stopper, but you knew, because they had not lost yet, but you knew that Indiana was probably going to get up for that game, and that was a huge game, one of their biggest games on the schedule, probably the biggest game remaining on the schedule, for the biggest game at all, really, on the schedule, because it looks like they don't play Ohio State at all during the regular season, which is insane. Possible they match up with them in the Big Ten championship, the way that things are looking right now. But it is possible they're in a letdown spot here, man. They're having to travel back from the Pacific Coast off of their biggest win of the season, which you might argue that was kind of their real legitimizer win, too, which is like the win where everybody starts to take notice. Although you might argue it was the win over Illinois, but I mean, beating Oregon on the road is a much bigger deal than that. So I do think it's a letdown spot for Indiana here. They don't really have anything big up next with UCLA up next. Not really having a good season, of course, but you know, they might overlook this Michigan State team that just has been bad since the start of Big Ten play, although Michigan State did lose 2 games on the road, but of course this is also on the road here. They're coming off an embarrassing home game, which unfortunately I gave out Michigan State in that game, and they started out up 7-0. It was looking all right early in that game for Michigan State. I thought it was a really huge letdown spot for UCLA coming off of that monumental upset over Penn State, and that was not to be. Michigan State, totally embarrassing performance there. I think they were without their quarterback, Childs, but I'm not sure if he actually got hurt or if he was just not playing that well, so they decided to switch quarterbacks to Milivojevic. Is that how you pronounce his name? I think I got that right. I don't know. Either way, I mean, I don't think it matters. I said that last week, I know, but I still don't really think it matters who Michigan State's quarterback is. I mean, their offense is pretty lackluster either way. But they're off that embarrassing result. I mean, they were a 7.5 point favorite. I think they were up to 9.5 maybe in that game. And at some point in that game. I forget what I gave it out at on my show, but it's an embarrassing loss for them. So I would lean to Michigan State getting the points in this one. I think the stock is pretty high on Indiana right now, and you're getting a ton of points, at least if you do like that side, up from 26.5 to 27.5. Might hit the 28, which is another key number in football, obviously, with the 4 touchdowns. 65% of tickets and only 58% of the cash on Indiana, so the money is kind of agreeing with the Michigan State side. The total is way down from 52.5 to 49.5. No public bettor is going to want to play an under in an Indiana game, really, even though, like I said, it did go way under against Iowa because Iowa was a capable defense. Not really sure Michigan State necessarily is, but 72% of tickets are on the over, 70% of the cash on the under. Total plummeting from 52.5 down to 49, so the money is coming in on the under in this one. Maybe Indiana just kind of in a mode where it's just like after that huge win, let's just get in and get out of this game, and maybe Indiana will go a little bit vanilla in this one. With an extremely low total like that, getting that many points on the spread seems pretty valuable. So I would take the points with Michigan State if I was going to play that game. That would be the lean there. Also at 3:30 Eastern on ESPN, number 4 Texas A&M at Arkansas, who has not been good so far. They're 0-2 in the SEC. They're only 2-4. Texas A&M up to 4th in the country. They're definitely a legit team, but how legit are they? I don't know. I mean, they have had a decent schedule so far. Their resume's decent. I mean, a road win over Notre Dame, definitely a good win. Beating Auburn is pretty solid, even though Auburn doesn't look like they're that good. They're, I think, a pretty underrated Auburn is right now. Auburn's not that bad. They have played competitively in all their losses to pretty good SEC teams. A blowout win over Mississippi State, who's kind of upstart this year, isn't bad either. And then a win over Florida last week. Florida's, I mean, I know they're kind of all over the place, but when Florida is showing up, they're actually playing pretty well. So, I mean, that is not a horrible win for Texas A&M there by any means. Yes, this is going to be their second road game of the season, though. Their only road game was against Notre Dame, and yeah, they won that game in a pretty unfamiliar environment, which is a good sign. I mean, they stepped up, they played well on the road there, but now they're having to go on the road to face this struggling Arkansas team. They're coming off a pretty big win over Florida still, even though Florida a little bit down this year, but still a big name, bigger than Arkansas is. And up next, Texas A&M has LSU, and then they're going to have Missouri, I guess after a bye, and then Missouri. So they have a couple of big games coming up after this one, so it is possible A&M kind of overlooks Arkansas here. And Arkansas is the team I was talking about where I wish I realized they fired their coach. They fired their coach after that Notre Dame game. So I talked about Arkansas against Tennessee last week, and I leaned to Arkansas. If I had known that they had fired their coach, I would have probably elevated it to a play, man, because Arkansas went into a bye. They went into the bye on a horrible note, losing in a blowout to Notre Dame, non-competitive completely, where I thought Arkansas would be competitive in that game. They fired their coach, and it gave them a spark, and they went in and they almost beat Tennessee last week, man. Although I think they were behind by quite a bit, and they clawed their way back in this game. Yeah, they were down 34-17 in the fourth quarter, but they didn't go away, and they cut it to 3 with still 3 minutes left in the game. So Arkansas gave a full effort in that one. So it might be difficult for them to get back up off the mat after that and now have another full effort against A&M, although the fired coach definitely sparked them in that one game. We'll see if it continues to spark them, but that should have been a play for me, man. I apologize that I missed out on the fired coach spot there because, as I point out, the fired coach will spark a team. The team will potentially, like if they didn't like that old coach, which I forget who their coach was. He was some old coach, and now they have Bobby Petrino, I think, stepped in, who's a pretty experienced coach at least. May actually be a better coach. But if with the fired coach phenomenon, if a team didn't like the previous coach, it can spark them because they are more motivated to play for that interim coach, which is usually a guy that they already know who's been in their system, which was the case here. And the players are going to be motivated to play better just because they want to prove that the reason they were playing so poorly was not them, and it was the coach and not them. So that's why the fired coach phenomenon tends to work. It did again there. And Tennessee had gone into a bye prior to that game as well and went into it on a good note. So that was kind of a momentum stopper. And Tennessee had this big game up, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit, against Alabama this week too. So that was, I think I talked about it last week. It was a spot to look towards Arkansas, but it probably would have elevated it to a play for me if I had realized that they'd fired their coach. So that was a miss on my part. I think we left some money on the table there. It's kind of always the case. So when you kind of whittle your list down and then those like final cuts are kind of like, they're still pretty strong. So if you do your job right, they're still like those final cuts are still going to win, and you're going to be like, more of them are going to win than lose, and you're still going to be kind of disappointed you didn't do it. You just hope that the ones that you actually make plays are the strongest ones. But yeah, Arkansas could be a little bit difficult to put in that effort multiple games in a row like that after that big effort against Tennessee on the road. I believe they upset Tennessee. I think actually that was the other reason why I didn't play it, because I think Tennessee was in kind of I thought they might be in revenge mode, because I'm pretty sure Arkansas did upset Tennessee last year. So I think that might have been one of the reasons why it didn't quite make the cut for me there. But with the fired coach, maybe it would have, maybe it still wouldn't have. Now that I think about it, I don't know. I'll tell myself that it wouldn't just to make myself feel better. But yeah, I mean, Texas A&M is legit. I don't know. I mean, it's going to be a big game for Arkansas, but can they maintain that effort 2 weeks in a row like that? I don't know. Usually I want to look to fade a team like Arkansas when they had that big effort against a big team like that in Tennessee. Texas A&M is just kind of rolling along. I mean, wait a minute. I just talked about Texas. Wait, what am I doing? I already talked about Texas A&M. Oh, yeah, I already did. Yeah, my apologies. I already talked about Texas A&M. What am I doing? I'm losing my mind right now. I talked about the fact I think they have a potential look ahead here. So both teams, to me, are in kind of bad spots here. With Texas A&M, with the stock being so high, with them being all the way up to ranked 4th in the country, I have a tendency to want to say, well, I kind of want to fade them. But, I mean, it looks like such a difficult spot to me for Arkansas, though. And A&M, I mean, I don't know. You could argue that maybe that win over Florida it wasn't really as big of an effort as Arkansas had to put in to stay in that game against Tennessee. So Arkansas coming off having to put in a bigger effort last week. It's still a look ahead for A&M. Man, I mean, maybe I'll slightly lean to laying the points with A&M, but I obviously, I would hesitate big time. I mean, I'm torn on this game, really. 73% of tickets, 78% of the cash on A&M, so they are public, but some of the money coming in on them as well. They've just sat there at 7.5 all week, so no real movement on that game, which makes it look like, well, because the public is on A&M and the line hasn't moved, kind of makes it seem like maybe the books just kind of want the A&M money there, but A&M is not on the lower side of the 7. Like if A&M was 6.5 and the books hadn't moved and the books were just taking all this A&M money, then I think I would have more of a tendency to want to actually grab Arkansas, seeing a market read like that. In this case, we're just at 7.5 on the other side of that key number. I don't know. It's like the books are maybe not quite tempting you as much to take A&M. So I don't know. I would lean to A&M slightly now just because it looks like a difficult spot to me for Arkansas there. But if they can, they should still get up for that game, though. 3:30 also, 3:30 Eastern on ABC, Ole Miss and Georgia. I'm not sure I always never know which one of these games is the college game day game. I don't know if it's this one or not, because this is number 5 Ole Miss, who's 6-0 against number 9 Georgia, who's 5-1, and Georgia's only losses to a very good Alabama team. Both these teams are good, man. But I think people are going to look at this. The public's going to look at this and see Ole Miss is a top 5 team. Georgia's ranked, but they're a little bit ranked below that. They have a loss already, and Ole Miss is undefeated. They're going to look at the line in this game and see, wait a minute, how am I getting 7 points with Ole Miss here when they're the higher-ranked team and they're the undefeated team? Well, this is one of those things I talk about again. It's odds makers versus rankings makers discrepancy here, where the odds makers are telling you that Georgia is enough the better team that they're laying a touchdown at home here. So probably you give them about maybe 4-ish for home field for Georgia. Probably pretty strong home field. But the odds makers are telling you they're still multiple points better than Ole Miss on a neutral, whereas the rankings makers are telling you something else. Of course, as I always say, I would lean towards what the odds makers are saying because they're the ones that have the money at stake here. The public is indeed coming in on Ole Miss, and not only just because of the rankings making it look like there's value on Ole Miss because they're the higher-ranked team, they're the undefeated team, so the records as well, but also because Ole Miss, the public likes offense, and that's what Ole Miss is. Ole Miss, they're the better offense, and Georgia is the better defense here. So the public likes offense. This Ole Miss team, it's Lane Kiffin. Even without Jackson Dart, their offense has been quite good this year. Even though they lost their quarterback earlier this year, Simmons, I think they went to Chambliss, and he's been no downgrade at all, basically. And Ole Miss, their offense is still just rolling. They go fast. But I think Georgia, they're good enough to slow Ole Miss down, man. I mean, Georgia, they're not unfamiliar with having to go up against Lane Kiffin, so they've done it before. Georgia, legit team, legit defense. Kirby Smart, even though sometimes he's not so smart, he knows how to beat this Ole Miss team. I think he could still probably do it again. The cash is coming in on Georgia, 57% of the cash on Georgia, despite 60% of tickets on Ole Miss. So it looks like a pros versus Joes situation where the Joes coming in and taking the higher-ranked Ole Miss team, getting points, thinking there's value there. I would disagree. I would lay the points with Georgia if I was going to play it, especially if you can lay them at a touchdown. They're gone up a little bit from 7 to 7 with juice. If you want to lay it with Georgia, yeah, I mean, obviously, like I just said, I would lay 7 if you can, which the public being on Ole Miss, I think you should probably be able to get the 7 because there hasn't been a whole lot of line movement. I don't see 7.5 consensus on this, so obviously laying the 7 is a lot better than laying the 7.5. For Ole Miss, as far as the schedule is concerned, I mean, this is a game where both teams are going to show up for the game. Ole Miss, you would think, might be in a spot where they should do better because last week they had a really bad game against Washington State, and I said that I leaned to Washington State. I didn't give it out as a play, but man, Ole Miss was like a 30-something point favorite in that game, and they didn't even score the point spread, and that is a red flag. I mean, when you're Ole Miss and you have a really good offense and you're a 30-something point favorite and you only score 24 against Washington State and you only beat them 24-21, I think that's not a good sign, man. I think that's a sign that Ole Miss is maybe not as good as they appear to be. They have one really good win against LSU, and other than that, their wins are not very good so far. Their SEC wins are Kentucky and Arkansas, and Kentucky was their only road game of the season so far, way back in early September, and they only won that game by 7, and we see Kentucky is not very good at this point, although, yeah, the public, I mean, might look at that as a common opponent and be like, oh, well, Georgia crushed Kentucky recently. Ole Miss barely got by Kentucky, and the public might want to lean to Georgia for that reason, but obviously, as we see, the public is not doing that, so they are probably not looking all the way back to a game that happened in September. I think when they do that kind of transitive thing, they're only looking at more recent games, and it'll be, a situation where they're not being kind of misled by the rankings makers and stuff like that, which I think they are in this game. But yeah, Ole Miss, the fact that they played so poorly in that game, I know it was a bad spot. I know they went into the bye on that win over LSU, with no losses. So that's a very bad time to have a bye because you don't have anything to fix. So they were very lackluster, basically had their momentum stopped coming out of that, and they had this Georgia game to look forward to. So yeah, it was a really bad spot for Ole Miss. But there's still really not much of an excuse for only putting up 24 points, man. So even though normally I would say, yeah, a 30-something point favorite that almost loses the game, like, yeah, they were in a bad spot, which was the case here, but normally I would also say they're going to bounce back from that. Like, it's going to cause them to have extreme focus the next week, and maybe they will. I mean, both teams are going to be focused here, in my opinion, but I just think Georgia's just the better team, man. In a situation like this where you think both teams are going to show up, I think you want to tend to look towards the team that's actually the better team. That is Georgia. Yeah, I mean, I know Georgia had a kind of a lackluster game last week, too, where Auburn should have covered. I gave out Auburn as one of my plays on the show, of course. Auburn, I thought, got screwed in the game. Auburn was winning 10-0. They were about to go up 17-0. I didn't agree with that fumble call with Auburn basically getting into the end zone to go up 17-0. The refs took it away from them, and they never scored again. And they were still only down 13-10 late in the game, and Georgia put up a late touchdown. There was that bullshit Kirby Smart calling a timeout and then claiming he didn't call a timeout or whatever happened there where he should have been charged with a timeout. All bullshit in my opinion. But I think after kind of a lackluster performance from Georgia's perspective there as well, I think they're going to show up for this game as well. I mean, part of the reason why I faded Georgia is because I thought it was a little bit of a look-ahead spot to this Ole Miss game. So I think both teams will show up. Too long of a handicap on that one, but I lean to Georgia. At least it's one of the bigger games. So I talked about the game a bit more than I probably had to, but lean to Georgia in that game. Jameson, what's up, man? Thanks for hanging out. T-Money, is that my new nickname? I kind of like it, man. I'm trying to think. I thought there was another gambling type of nickname that somebody gave me at one point. I forget what it was, though. Maybe not. I know Nate, or one of the guys in the chat, has called me T-Bone. Probably because I look like George Costanza, though, more than anything. Am I going to really talk about every one of these ranked games? I think I am. I mean, it's going to be another 2-hour show, maybe. Hopefully not, but maybe. Into the 4 p.m. slate with Fox televising number 7 Texas Tech, undefeated at 6-0 against 4-2 Arizona State, who's dropped from the rankings, though Arizona State's still not a bad team. I was just kind of looking to my side here to see what the score is in this Cal game, but they're showing a replay, so I can't see the score. Oh, my God. It looks like Cal just actually got fumbled there. I think the fumble must have gone out of bounds because it looks like it's a 4th down for Cal there. They're up by 11 right now. How many plays do I have? I have 4 for tomorrow, and hopefully I'm picking the right ones, man, because I have some games that are fairly close to being plays, which I'm going to talk about as well. I had one tonight, which was an outright huge underdog winner on Louisville, so that was a nice one. College football rolling along, man. I mean, we had a couple of really hot weeks. Started off bad, got really hot, and then we've been mediocre the last couple of weeks, like basically 50-50, which is losing when you're at 50-50, but slight losses versus being really hot the couple of weeks before that. So I'm still up, I think, in college football this year. But yeah, Texas Tech, Arizona State. Talk about this game here. This is a game where, this game is hard to figure out because this is who the hell is going to play quarterback in this game, pretty much. We don't know who the quarterbacks are going to necessarily be in this game. Normally, I would say, you kind of want to look towards Arizona State in this one because the line is a little bit low. It almost looks too easy to lay the points with this Texas Tech team. Everybody likes Texas Tech. They have this really prolific offense. Their defense is decent, too. Looks fairly easy to lay the points with Texas Tech here. So I'm going to slightly lean against that. I am going to lean to taking the points with Arizona State here, but I definitely have some hesitations with it. Now, looking at the line here, Texas Tech was a 10-point favorite. They're down to 7. 77% of tickets on them, only 55% of the cash. So they're public with less of the money on them. I'm going to agree with that market read towards taking the points with Arizona State, but the reason why Texas Tech is down from 10 to 7 is because there are question marks surrounding whether their quarterback Morton is going to play. And right now, I think we don't know. So I think the line is kind of just out there, kind of in the middle. Like basically, is he going to play? Is he not going to play? I think if it's announced that he is going to play, the line will probably go back up to 10. If he's not going to play, which looks like is more likely at this point, then I think the line will potentially maybe even drop a little bit further below that key number 7. So if you do like Arizona State, you want to get the +7 before it drops to 6.5, which it might. However, I don't want to play this game, even though, Texas Tech, I mean, they're undefeated. I mean, they haven't really done a whole lot yet except a big win over Utah. And that was a good performance, but Texas Tech is still kind of unproven to me. And Arizona State's still a decent defense that could potentially maybe check Texas Tech's offense a little bit here. But Texas Tech, if they're in the injured player theory spot, that means you're going to get a little bit extra value on the line with Texas Tech. And because Morton went down in their last game against Kansas last week. And I always talk about this. When a team loses their quarterback, they tend to step it up a little bit with their backup quarterback coming in there because they know they have to step up their game a little bit. And I think Morton was hurt at some point earlier this season because Hammond came in and actually was one of the quarterbacks. He was their leading passer in that game against Utah. So Hammond, even though I think he is a downgrade from Morton, he will be back in for Texas Tech if Morton's not going to go. Maybe the injured player spot will apply here, though, because Hammond, maybe he's not I mean, I don't know, man. I don't know how much of a downgrade he is, to be honest. I mean, the oddsmakers are telling you he's a decent downgrade here. But again, the oddsmakers kind of have to do that with the line when they know there's an injured player. They kind of have to shift the line just to account for that fact anyway. And again, the Texas Tech might step up their game a little bit for that reason. I think it's a big game for both teams. So it is the injured player spot for Texas Tech, and it's actually going to be reverse injured player spot for Arizona State, which I talked about last week. I still leaned to Utah last week just because I thought they were the way better team, even though Arizona State was in the injured player spot last week because they lost their quarterback Levitt prior to that, and Sims played last week, and he really didn't do well against Utah. Arizona State's coming off that game. It was a big game for Arizona State, but they got totally embarrassed. So I don't know. I could see that going either way, but of course this will still be a big game for Arizona State. Like, I don't think they'll be hung over off of that Utah game because Texas Tech coming in, they're still going to step up their game for this, but Levitt is probable, so he will be back for Arizona State, most certainly. He's going to be back. So their quarterback is coming back, but then again, that does mean the players might kind of take a little bit of a step back. It might take a little while for him to get his chemistry back with his team back out there, and you're going to get a little bit less value maybe on Arizona State because that is the case, because it's the reverse injured player spot with him coming back. And normally with an injured player spot, which is where Texas Tech may be here, against a reverse injured player spot where Arizona State is here, I'd be looking to lay the points, but I'm not looking to do that here. I just think Texas Tech, they're still unproven. The market read is still saying take the points with Arizona State. I would lean that way slightly, but I'm certainly not jumping out of my seat to do it. I mean, I don't see a whole lot of a situation here. I don't know what a better way of phrasing that would be, but I don't see much as far as the situational aspects. I don't see, as far as the situational aspects, I don't see a whole lot going on in this game is what I should say. It's late, man. I can't even talk anymore. I saw Louis C.K. earlier tonight, even though I'm still doing this show around the same time after I had to handicap all the rest of the games right before this. So this is me doing my quick handicapping. And dude, I mean, that's what it's me, like lazy quick handicapping. It still kind of works out. Jameson, yeah. Louisville, yeah. I mean, the line did crash. I gave it out at 13 this morning. I didn't expect it to crash that much. Crashed down to 10.5. I did get asked about it when it was at 10.5, and I said, yeah, I mean, I would probably still take the 10.5. I didn't like it as much, obviously, but between 13 and still being above 10, I mean, those numbers, 11 and 12 are not key numbers, so I was like, 13 is kind of a key number, but still anything above 10, I think I basically said, yeah, still play it. ESPN 2 at 4 p.m. Memphis, who's now ranked 22nd in the country, 6-0 at UAB, who has not won yet even in the American Conference. They've won 2 games, so they haven't won in the American yet. This UAB team, not good this year, although Memphis just cracked the rankings. So sometimes when a team is unranked all season and they just barely get into the rankings, you do kind of want to look to fade them because they're at kind of that peak value. And Memphis went into a bye last week on a roll. They were 6-0. I talk about this. When a team's undefeated and they go into a bye, that's not a good situation because they're not used to having their momentum stopped like that. It can definitely be a momentum stopper. So I think it's a bad spot for Memphis because they had the bye at an inopportune time when they were rolling. They'd blown out FAU and Tulsa going into that bye. Now they get this road game against UAB, and up next, they got South Florida, who is ranked in the top 25 right now again. That's a huge matchup. It's going to be one of the biggest games on their slate. Memphis, probably, it is their biggest game left. So I think it is sort of a sandwich spot, really, because they're coming out of a bye in an inopportune time. They have a big look ahead next to their next game, so UAB looks like they should be the right side in this one, man. UAB coming off just an embarrassing performance, really, against Florida Atlantic. This UAB team is not good, though. FAU was actually a 5.5-point favorite in that one, but UAB lost really badly, 53-33. I don't know if there's anything to look at as far as the box score. Yeah, they did get pretty manhandled in the game. FAU outgained them by over 150 yards in the game, so it wasn't really a misleading result. But an ugly result nonetheless. And UAB at home against Memphis is going to be one of their big remaining games. A UAB team that knows they're not really going anywhere probably this year. I mean, their remaining home games are pretty much all against really difficult opponents. So they're probably not going to make a bowl this year. So the games on their schedule where they're going to show up are games like this with a ranked team coming in. And it's a bad spot for Memphis. So I would lean to UAB in that one. Not going to make my card, but Memphis is public. You're getting a key number of 21.5. It looks like you can find out there in UAB if you want to get it. Either 21.5 or 21. I mean, I would still lean that way. 85% of tickets on Memphis. They're very public, despite laying a huge amount of points. Only 56% of the cash on them, though. high total in the 60s, but it has dropped a bit from 64 to 62.5 with money coming in on the under. So, I mean, I tend to like to take points more with low total games because they're more expected to be like ugly and the points are worth more, which isn't really the case here, but the money is coming in on the under. So that's at least a decent sign there. I would still lean to taking the points with UAB though in that one. It's a bad spot that Memphis is in. Number 8, Oregon at Rutgers on the Big Ten Network. Rutgers still has not won a Big Ten game yet. Oregon, still a very good team. I mean, they took their first loss, though, last week to Indiana at home. I mean, not great. As I mentioned, I leaned to Indiana in that game last week. Wasn't going to be a play for me. But Indiana got the job done, and now that was a big game. Oregon's coming off 2 big games now, though they did have a bye in between them. But they went to Penn State, beat them in double overtime, had a bye, and then they lost to Indiana. Both teams were coming out of byes last week in that one. But yeah, Oregon, it was a high-profile game at home against Indiana. Took that first loss, and I talk about this when a team takes their first loss, especially in a high-profile game like that. There was a fairly contested battle there. Oregon lost by 10, but the game was closer than that in the fourth quarter. And Oregon was they were the favorite in that game, so sometimes I argue, well, when a team loses as a favorite, they'll refocus and bounce back from that. But I don't think that's the case here, and it's such a high-profile game. It was a close game, big battle, first loss of the season. So all those things can kind of hang that team over into the next game, and they can kind of lose that game twice. But to make it worse, Oregon has to fly all the way to the East Coast for this one, to New Jersey. And, yeah, they've gone east-ish a couple of times this year. The furthest east they went was Penn State. And they won both games at Northwestern and at Penn State. But if you want Rutgers here, you're obviously not asking Rutgers to win the game. You're only asking them to cover as a big underdog here. I think it's a bad spot, though. Oregon having to go all the way out to the East Coast. It's not an early start time, so that does help Oregon a little bit. But it's also a little bit of a trade-off because, Rutgers is going to show up for a game against Oregon at home. And when the night games start coming into play, the crowd is more drunk at that time. So the home field advantage is actually sometimes greater in night games because the crowd is just so rowdy late in the games like that. So I do think it's not a very good spot for Oregon. As far as Rutgers is concerned, they're actually they have a little bit of extra rest because they played last Friday, and everybody, well, not everybody, but people did see that game on primetime, a Friday night game there, and they actually had a bye going into that game. So they're a little bit more, somewhat more rested right now, having only played once since September 27th, and I think Oregon has played twice since then now. But yeah, Rutgers does have that extra day off because they played on Friday, but it's a bit of an issue because they are also having to travel back to the East Coast from the Pacific Coast. So it makes the spot a little bit worse for Rutgers for that reason because they were out on the Pacific Coast. But it was a primetime game that people watched, and Rutgers lost that game to Washington. Washington's a pretty good team, though, flying under the radar still, I think. Washington did outgain them by almost 100 yards, so it wasn't exactly a misleading final result. I mean, maybe a little bit, just the fact that they won by 19, Washington did maybe slightly misleading, but not a good performance from Rutgers. They're still looking for their first Big Ten win. I mean, they know they're pretty much not going anywhere, although they could still potentially make a bowl here. But they're going to have to get one of these games against a better team probably if they're going to make a bowl. I don't think they're going to win this game, but I think they will at least show up for it. Coming in off some losses there. I think it's a worse spot for Oregon. I'll lean to Rutgers in this one. The line isn't as high as you would think. It is up a little bit from 14.5 to 17.5. 83% of tickets, only 82% of the cash on Oregon, so they're very public. Oregon is less of the money on them. Yeah, I would look to take the points with Rutgers, although it's a game with a fairly high total that's gone up through 60, up through 61 almost there. So a little bit less tempting to take the points for that reason too, but that's the way I would lean. Washington State at Virginia at 6:30 on the CW, with Virginia sitting in the rankings at number 18, having a good season. Washington State, not really. I think both of these teams are in bad spots, though. Washington State had that performance last week against Ole Miss as 30-whatever point underdogs. So Washington State hung in that game, man, and only lost by 3. And this is going to be the third straight road game, although they did have a bye between Colorado State and Ole Miss. But it's a difficult spot for Washington State, man. I'm not used to playing out on the Eastern time zone, coming off that big performance where they almost not almost beat really, but they came within 3 of, I think they kind of, not backdoored it, but I think they kind of scored some of their points late in that game. But still a ridiculous performance from Washington in that Washington State in that game. So when a team does that, I usually think they're pretty hungover coming into the next game. So it's really not a good spot for Washington State here. But I don't think the spot is very good for Virginia either. Virginia went into a bye. They had a bye last week, but they went into the bye on a good note. The bye might help maybe because they had back-to-back overtime games. They had that huge win in double overtime where I was on Virginia in that one against Florida State. Massive win for them. Then they followed it up by pulling off a road upset at Louisville in overtime, which very unfortunate for me on this show because I gave out Louisville minus the points in that one. And Louisville probably should have won the game, maybe even should have covered the game. I mean, based on the statistics, Louisville outstatted Virginia quite a bit in that game, but it was still a big upset win for Virginia. So they went into the bye on a very good note. So I don't think it's a good spot for Virginia, man. They went into the bye. That can be a momentum stopper when you go into the bye on a good note. Now they get this orphaned Pac-2 team, Washington State, coming in, which isn't really going to matter on their schedule. They resume ACC play next week against North Carolina. I know North Carolina's not good, but it is still Bill Belichick, and it is still an ACC game. So this game doesn't mean as much for Virginia, so it's not a good spot for either team here. So, I mean, what do you get when you get 2 teams that look like they might not show up? I mean, Washington State might be tired and hungover. I think Washington State, they'll try to show up because it's a ranked opponent that they're facing. Whereas Virginia, I think, just might not show up. So it's like, how do you handicap that at all, really? Like, as far as Washington State is concerned, because they're fatigued, I would think that would kind of affect their defense and make their defense worse. But with Virginia, I think that the fact that they might just overlook this game, I think that that can kind of affect both sides of the ball, offense and defense. So we will see. I mean, the total is getting a lot of traction on the under. 75% of tickets on the over, 85% of cash on the under. It's a pretty strong market read on the under. I mean, I wouldn't really want to do it, but 56%, 56.5 is the total, down to 56.5, heavily juiced to the under. Virginia is public, 67% of tickets on them, only 57% of the cash, and they've dropped a little bit from 18 to 17.5, so the money is actually coming in on the Washington State side there. Yeah, I mean, it is definitely an overlook spot for Virginia, but I worry about Washington State's fatigue factor after such a huge performance last week, so I worry about that. The only ranked matchup, is it the only ranked matchup where I have a play? I don't know. It might be, but I'm going to have a play in Texas and Kentucky. If you know how I handicap, you might already know what it is, so I'm going to wait on that. ABC at 7:30, Tennessee and Alabama. Big game here. Number 11, Tennessee at number 6, Alabama. Both teams one loss on the season, although Tennessee's loss was in SEC play to Georgia. So, I mean, people might look at that a little bit and see, Tennessee lost to Georgia at home. Alabama actually beat Georgia on the road. So that means Alabama is the better team. Well, yes, they are. I mean, the odds makers are telling you that Alabama's the better team. I don't know how much of that, like, transitive handicapping the public is going to do in this one, though. I think they see a big matchup like Tennessee against Alabama, and they might actually have a tendency to take the points in a big matchup like this. Alabama, I mean, they're definitely legit. Tennessee is good as well. I think Alabama maybe still slightly underranked. Tennessee, I don't really know exactly. As far as the situation is concerned here, Tennessee coming off that win over Arkansas last week where Tennessee didn't play very well, and they barely got by Arkansas as a big favorite, like I said. I think Tennessee was in a bad spot. They'd gone into a bye that I think kind of stopped their momentum because they went into the bye on a multiple-game win streak. They had this Alabama game up next, which I think they were probably looking ahead to. So Tennessee had a bad performance, so they should come, with more focus in this game. But I think Alabama's going to be focused too. Alabama, we went against them last week, and I gave it out at either 3 or 3.5. I did say that you could wait and probably find the 3.5 on Missouri last week, and it was there at a lot of books still on game day. So I wound up scoring that at 3.5 for a winner on that one, which I won't do if the line, doesn't show up again. But Alabama, they had kind of a lackluster-ish game as well. They're in what I thought was a bad spot because Alabama was coming off beating Georgia and then getting revenge against Vandy for that high-profile upset win that Vandy had against them last year. I think Alabama did have that game circled. They showed up. They won the game. The Missouri game I don't think meant as much. And they had this game against Tennessee up next. And this is also revenge for Alabama because Tennessee actually beat Alabama last year as well. So I think Alabama has this game circled too. I think they're going to show up for it. Both teams are in focus spots here, coming off kind of lackluster performances. But I'm going to lean to the better team when it's a situation like that. That is Alabama. They're down from 8.5 to 8 here. 58% of tickets, 76% of the cash on Alabama. So the money is saying to lay the points with Alabama. I agree. The total is not too low here. Both offenses are pretty good. I think Alabama is the better overall team, though, the more balanced team. Even though, yes, I know Alabama has a freshman quarterback here in Simpson. He's been good. So he's played some high-profile games already this season, so I don't think the pressure is going to get to him or anything like that. He's already experienced in the revenge mode as well because they were able to win and cover against Vandy, too. So I'm going to lean to Alabama here. And yeah, Alabama, out of the two teams, I think they have the better defense out of the two as well, whereas both teams, I think, have good offenses as well. So even though maybe Tennessee is the somewhat better offense, and normally I would want to take the better defense getting points, or rather than laying points with the better defense, which is the case here with Alabama. But in this case, Alabama, I just think is the overall better team. So I would lay it there. And that's the thing I think I forgot to say with the Georgia game. Georgia, in their game against Ole Miss, is definitely the team with the better defense. And usually, again, I would want to take points with the better defense more often than not. But I would still lay it with Georgia in their game, and I would still lay it with Alabama in this one because I just think it's kind of a ranking situation where it looks like it's going to be a closer game than maybe it is based on what the odds makers are telling you. So, yeah, I'm leaning towards some favorites here. You know, I mean, I like to go contrarian, so it's going to have me on a lot of underdogs, but not always. And I like another favorite here in USC and Notre Dame here. Notre Dame's laying a lot of points here, man. So the public's going to look at this and probably think it's way too many points for Notre Dame to be laying, especially against a USC team that can score a lot. USC is ranked 20th in the country. They have one loss. Notre Dame, 2 losses, ranked 13th in the country. I told you that everybody was kind of just overreacting to the fact that Notre Dame started 0-2. I mean, we've seen Miami, even though I know Miami lost tonight, thankfully. We got it right with Louisville. Miami's still a really good team. Texas A&M also a really good team, and those are Notre Dame's losses. Yeah, I know they haven't played anybody as good as those teams since then. Their best win was at Arkansas, or well, maybe not at Arkansas. They hosted Boise State, and they won that game. That was probably a bigger game, a better win. But they demolished Arkansas. They pretty much had no problem with Boise State. And Notre Dame's defense looks like they're finally showing up after their defense didn't look that good in a couple of those early games, especially giving up 41 to A&M and then 30 to Purdue. But it looks like maybe Notre Dame has kind of turned it around a little bit defensively. So I would still argue that Notre Dame probably does have the better defense here over USC. USC, decent defensively, kind of, but they're much more of an offensive team. USC is one of the top offenses in all of college football. Notre Dame's offense has been fairly good as well. Notre Dame, I mean, they're just kind of rolling along right now, though. I mean, their last game last week was an easy win over NC State. NC State, not a good team, but Notre Dame took care of business, and they're coming off such an easy win. That means they're going to be they're going to have the ability to play better in this game just because, well, they're staying at home for 3 weeks in a row, but also that last game was just an easy effort game, so they're not coming off of like a grueling performance, so they won't be fatigued, is what I should say. And you know they're going to be focused on this game against USC because Notre Dame not being in a conference, they're kind of like almost pseudo in the ACC. They play a lot of ACC teams. This is their biggest game left on the schedule, and it is also a rivalry game, but if Notre Dame's going to want to try to get into the college football playoff or anything like that, they got to beat USC because they don't really have much. They're going to have to beat USC. They have to win this game, and they'll have to run the table probably because they can't really afford another loss to any of these teams here. But they could still do it. Will they? I don't know, but I do think they're going to win this game. This is a big game. It's a big game for both teams. Yeah, it's the battle for the golden shillelagh, as I mentioned last week. You get a golden Irish walking stick if you win this game. I didn't really realize USC was considered to be an Irish school, but I guess they are. I mean, Notre Dame also has their Boston College rivalry with the two Irish Catholic schools there coming up next, so that's after a bye. But, of course, BC is so down this year. That's not a look-ahead spot, even though it is technically a rivalry. This is the big one for Notre Dame, man. So I think they're going to show up Notre Dame did lose their center, I believe. So that's one concern with Notre Dame. I don't know how that's going to impact their offense. They still have a quarterback who's not totally that experienced in Carr, so losing their, a key piece of their offensive line could hurt a little bit, so we'll see. But it's not going to have me not leaning towards Notre Dame in this one. It's just maybe somewhat of a concern, but the spot for USC is not good, man. USC, they had basically their legitimizing win last week because USC hadn't really, their biggest win before last week was against Michigan State, basically, so they really hadn't played anybody, and then they lost a game where they were a road favorite at Illinois, which wasn't great. But USC still putting up a ton of offense, and they had their biggest win, man, last week against Michigan. Huge win, a ranked matchup like that against a team with such a big name like Michigan. It was a bad spot for Michigan. I gave out USC as a lean last week. Maybe I should have elevated it to a play. I did like it quite a bit. But USC, they got the job done. They beat Michigan, put up a lot of offense in the game. Very nice-looking win. Yeah, I don't think there was anything really misleading about it necessarily either. I looked at the box score, but I kind of forget. USC pretty much dominated. They outgained Michigan by 170 yards or whatever that is. So it was not a misleading final score in that one. But USC, that was a huge win for them. And Michigan having to go out to the Pacific Coast, not exactly an easy spot for them. Now USC has to go back out on the road, and they haven't exactly been great in doing that. They're still not totally used to it, I don't think, in the Big Ten. They only beat Purdue on the road 33-17, and they lost at Illinois. And Notre Dame is a different animal. They're better than Purdue and Illinois, obviously. So difficult spot for USC, having to go to an environment they're not really they're more used to going to Notre Dame, I guess, because I think it's a rivalry that happens every year, but they alternate venues. So this current iteration of USC, I don't think is really used to going there. Bit of a difficult game, but for USC, it's interesting because this is an out-of-conference game because Notre Dame's an independent. So USC, this is not going to affect their Big Ten record where they took that one Big Ten loss against Illinois. They got to win the rest of their Big Ten games, man. They don't really have to necessarily, I don't think, worry that much about another, like an out-of-conference loss, I don't think, because if they can make the Big Ten championship, they could still win that and get into the playoffs. So this game actually means a little bit less than the rest of their Big Ten slate, kind of. So I kind of like Notre Dame in this one. Even though they did lose their center, USC did lose their running back, Jordan, last week, but it looks like it didn't really affect them at all as Miller came in and ran for 158 against a pretty good Michigan defense. So this USC offense is for real. Running backs tend to be plug and play, so the Notre Dame center injury is worse than USC's running back injury, but this is a situation where the public is coming in on USC, man. They're seeing this ranked matchup. They're seeing USC with a better record, and they're thinking this is way too many points here. And they're seeing that USC can score a lot. Public's still probably not really sold on Notre Dame, just because some of their wins are just kind of more, or they're less impressive, I guess I should say. So the public is thinking this is way too many points. So they're coming in on USC to the tune of 72% of the tickets and only 60% of the cash. And I talk about this. When you have a public road underdog like that, and the spread is this big, you almost never see that. The public coming in on a 10-point underdog. Notre Dame's up from 8.5 to 10 here. I would lay the points with Notre Dame. Even at 10, I think I would still lay it if I was going to play this game. Won't make my card. Might use Notre Dame in Survivor, where they just have to win the game outright because they're unavailable, I think, on Splash Sports for the rest of the way at least the pool that I'm in is set up. I think you can't use them in the rest of their games for whatever reason. I think something about it being because they're not in a conference maybe, so I think you only get to play them when they're up against ranked teams. I don't know what the fuck the deal is, but I might do that, and we'll see. I'm probably going to use them and maybe Cincinnati, and hopefully that will get the job done for me this week. Teams that I don't really want to use in the future, and Notre Dame just because I can't use them in the future. I don't think I really have much else to say about this. The total is high, up from 60.5 to 61.5. 90% of tickets on the over, 81% of the cash on the over. So the money is somewhat saying to come in on the under in this one, but that seems dangerous to me. Notre Dame's defense has started to play better. They are the better of these two defenses. USC is the better offense. Both offenses are the better units for the two teams, though, so it kind of seems like more of an over type of game, but the public is all over the over. So Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna recommend doing that. Certainly, I think if you're gonna play that game, I would lay the points at Notre Dame, and at least with a higher total, it kind of makes sense to lay points because it's easier for a team to cover a spread like that when the total is higher, and there are going to be more points scored in the game most likely. Florida Atlantic at South Florida. South Florida is up to 19th in the country again, which I think they're not really a top 25 team. People saw kind of what they did because it was kind of the most high-profile game last Friday, or one of them, where it was a high-flying offensive game, and South Florida put up 63 points and beat North Texas on the road 63-36. Just a ridiculous win for South Florida in that game. So I think the public's going to be back on the South Florida train, and maybe some of them watched that game because it was a high-profile game on Friday night primetime. There was not a lot of games being played, but I'm not sold on South Florida. I know they have those wins early in the season against Boise and Florida. I went against South Florida after that against Miami because the win over Florida was just so monumental, and they got manhandled by Miami. And since then, their most impressive win is that North Texas one since then. But people are just going to love the fact they have this high-flying offense. That was a big win in primetime, very satisfying win for South Florida against another pretty good team in North Texas who's pretty good in the same conference as they are. So that was a big win. Dealing North Texas their first loss, too. North Texas was undefeated. Now they get this bad Florida Atlantic team, and up next they get Memphis, as I pointed out, a ranked Memphis team. So I think this is a sandwich spot that South Florida is in, so I do not like it. I think this game sandwiched in between the two is a much it's a much lesser game for them. Like, they might just take Florida Atlantic pretty lightly. Although FAU, they can at least somewhat score. Their offense definitely got back on track last week with 53 points against UAB. So that's a decent sign. They got Veltkamp at quarterback, as I keep mentioning. He's a pretty experienced quarterback, although their rushing attack hasn't been very good. But Veltkamp's starting to get it go. He's been getting it going. He's been fine like most of the season, really. I don't know what I'm talking about. He's a decent quarterback, though. I think he was on Western Kentucky prior to being on FAU, which is really kind of a downgrade, though. Although FAU's been a decent team in the last couple of years. But for their remaining schedule, this is a big game, man. They get to face a ranked South Florida team here. This is close to being a play for me, man. I do like this one. I would fade South Florida. They're very public, and they're up to 21 with juice. You might even be able to get 21.5 here. 81% of tickets, only 57% of the cash on South Florida. It's an insanely high total, though. This is ridiculous. It's up from 72 to 73. This is insane, man. Very rare that you see a total of that magnitude. I think we did see a couple that were even higher than that over the last several years. I think there was one that I remember with like West Virginia and Baylor back in the day where both those offenses were crazy and the defenses were terrible. That might have even been in the high 70s, but this is still insane. 78% of tickets on the over, only 64% of the cash on the over. So the public looks like they're still coming in and playing an over at 73. I don't even buy that. I don't know what maniacal public bettor would want to lay an over 73, but it might happen. It's looking like it's going to be a high-scoring game, which is going to kind of dissuade me a little bit from wanting to take the 21 points here, but that is the way I would look. 81% of tickets, only 57% of the cash on South Florida. Again, it will be easier for them to cover a number like that if it's a very high-scoring game, but I think it's a bad spot for South Florida. I'm going to lean to FAU, even though, FAU put up a lot of points last week too. So they are coming off that game, but I don't think they're going to be in a letdown spot or anything like that, and this is going to be a big game for them. That's at 7:30 p.m. Eastern on ESPNU. I forgot to mention the rest of these. 7:30 p.m. is what USC and Notre Dame is as well on NBC and Peacock. 7:45 p.m. Eastern, we got a couple of ranked matchups left. I know I'm talking about all of them, but most of these are big games or games that I have opinions on. Number 16, Missouri at unranked Auburn. Auburn 0-3 in the SEC, but Auburn has not had it easy, man. Auburn, they've had a difficult schedule. Their 3 losses are to Oklahoma on the road, Texas A&M on the road, and then Georgia at home, where I think Auburn kind of got screwed in that game. We had Auburn plus the points. Don't want to keep reiterating that, but I think the refs screwed them in numerous ways in that game. But Auburn played competitively in all 3 of those games against very good teams. So this Auburn team, is better than their record looks right now, man. They're looking for their first SEC win still. They got a ranked team coming in. I think they're going to show up for this. I know it was a heartbreaking loss last week, though, so that's basically the main reason why I'm not going to give it a play on Auburn is because they are coming off a tough game last week, which was a bit of a heartbreaker there because the refs kind of took it away from them. It was a big game for them against Georgia. They'll still try to show up for this game against Missouri, though, so I do think the spot is a little bit worse for Missouri. Missouri is, of course, coming off that game where they almost could have beaten Alabama. Huge game for them, and that was their first SEC game. It was their second, excuse me. They beat South Carolina, my mistake. It was their first game against a really strong team, though, so we didn't really know how good Missouri was, although I liked them because the spot wasn't good for Alabama in that one, and Missouri put up a nice fight in that one, had chances to win the game. They did not win the game, and now they're coming off that big game. They got to go to this unranked Auburn team that doesn't have an SEC win. And after that, they have ranked Vandy and then a bye and then ranked Texas A&M. So I think they might overlook Auburn here. It is a sandwich spot. It was also Missouri's first loss, and that can tend to hang you over. So in addition to it just being a hangover spot, generally because it was a tough game against Alabama, that's going to be a hangover just in and of itself. But it's also going to be a hangover spot because it's their first loss of the season. And this is going to be even more difficult because this late into the season, this is their first road game. They've played at home this entire season so far until this point, which is just absolutely absurd. So that makes it even more difficult. They're not even used to traveling yet, and now for the first time they have to do it this late into the season. That can be a bit disruptive too. And then, of course, the line is going to be really ridiculous here. Missouri's flipped from a 2.5 dog to a 2-point favorite here for whatever reason, but it just looks way too easy to lay that with Missouri, man. It's basically still a pick the winner price. So obviously I would not do that. The public is going to come in, ranked Missouri, and their only loss is a close loss to Alabama. Auburn, 3-3, no wins in the SEC. It looks so easy, right? Just play Missouri to win the game. 56% of tickets, only 52% of the cash on Missouri. If you do like taking the points here, you get some value in doing that with Auburn here because the total's really low. So it's one of those games where kind of misleading rankings. Missouri's way up in the rankings here. Auburn unranked, but Auburn definitely better than the record looks. Should I do it? I mean, this one is definitely close to a play for me, man. Man. I think I'll stay off of it, but man, the thing that is almost putting it over the edge for me is that it's the first road game for Missouri is what's kind of doing it for me, like making it very, very close to being a play for me. So I definitely have a strong opinion on this one, Auburn. I will say that. Somewhat of a strong opinion on that FAU side still, but just, I don't know about that. The fact the total is so high in that one. Money's coming in on the under in this Missouri-Auburn game, down from 45 to 43.5. 72% of tickets on the over, 54% of the cash on the under. So looking like a low-scoring game with the total down to 43.5 means the points are worth more. Definitely lean to Auburn in that game. At 8 p.m. on Fox, 8 p.m. Eastern, number 23 Utah back in the rankings against number 15 undefeated BYU. Utah with 1 loss, BYU no losses. This is the Holy War. The rivalry has been renewed, I guess, because these teams are both in the Big 12 now. It's a big matchup. 2 Utah teams, they don't like each other. It was a big game last year. I think BYU won the game last year. And I think it was when Utah was kind of in a spot where they were dealing with their quarterback issues last year. Didn't really know who their quarterback was because the guy whose name I always forget kept getting injured there, Cam Rising. So they didn't really know who their quarterback was going to be. And it was a duel, man. And BYU actually went into Utah and beat them 22-21. So this is going to be a revenge spot for Utah. Utah is going to remember that. Even though they have a new quarterback this year, Utah losing at home like that to BYU last year, Utah is going to want to show up and return the favor here, man. I know Utah's have a pretty satisfying win last week against Arizona State, but this is also a big game here, man. I think they're going to show up for it. So even though, it was a satisfying win last week, I kind of like Utah in this one. BYU coming off a double overtime game last week at Arizona, which was a pretty big game for them, pretty big win for them. I know this is still a big game, too, against Utah. Beating Arizona was still a pretty good win, but BYU really has not been battle-tested, man. That game was their most difficult game, and I leaned to Arizona in that game, and Arizona wound up losing it in double overtime and not covering, of course. But besides that, who's BYU even played? Their best win besides that is a 3-point win at Colorado, I guess. I mean, that's just ridiculous. So BYU, they really have not played anybody yet. Utah, I know the strongest opponent they faced was Texas Tech, and yeah, I know they lost that game. But hey, they won at UCLA where Penn State couldn't even win, so maybe that win isn't looking as useless as it was early in the season, and they did beat ranked Arizona State last week, so Utah still has faced a more difficult schedule. BYU is still coming off that tough overtime game, which usually also puts you in a fade spot. And you know the public is going to see this and see, oh, BYU is the higher-ranked team and undefeated, and we're getting points with them at home. It looks so easy to take BYU, man, right? Well, again, the odds makers are telling you no. The odds makers are telling you that Utah is such the better team that they're actually a 3.5 point road favorite here. So the odds makers are telling you something completely different than what the rankings makers are telling you. I agree with it. I would lay the points with Utah if I was going to play it. 51% of tickets, 59% of the cash on Utah, up from 3 to 3.5. Of course, laying the 3 is a lot better than 3.5. I would maybe still do it either way if I was going to play the game at all, but maybe you can find Utah at a decent money line price or something. I don't know, but I'm going to lean towards Utah in that game. Hopefully you can find the 3, and maybe if the public's just not that heavily on BYU in that one, though, so I don't know if the public's going to come in and influence the line. But maybe there are still 3s out there for you with Utah there. Cincinnati against Oklahoma State on ESPN2 at 8 p.m. Cincinnati up in the rankings now at 24. I probably am going to wind up using them in Survivor. I mean, at least they're a huge favorite, but at some point I'm going to die in Survivor, man. And I hope I don't, because I want to win some money. And I don't think I'm going to win in my money pick'ems, which sounds ridiculous because my plays have been all right, especially some of the ones that don't, like some of my strong leans have been good too, and I'm using basically those, the plays and the strong leans in my pick'ems, but it's just, you have to be so good to hit the money threshold in some of those splash entries. I have 2 in college football and 1 in NFL, and I think I'm just not going to make it, but we'll see. Cincinnati, they haven't lost since their opener against Nebraska. They've had some decent wins on the road at Kansas, beat Iowa State at home, beat UCF last week in a kind of lackluster game, really. UCF was able to kind of slow that game down. Cincinnati, really high-flying offense, and UCF held them to 20 points. So Cincinnati, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what happened in that game, but UCF maybe decent defensively, at least decent at slowing the game down. They're usually decent at running the football. Wasn't a great win for Cincinnati. Looked like kind of an ugly 20-11 win. But now they're going out on the road for only the second time this year. And they do have Baylor up next, and then Utah, and then Arizona. So it's not the greatest spot for Cincinnati, although I don't know if it's really like a terrible spot necessarily either. Oklahoma State only has 1 win, of course, which they don't have any FBS wins. Their only win was their opener against FCS UT Martin. So they were playing so badly, they fired their coach, of course, and we took Oklahoma State plus the points against Baylor. They were able to cover, but since then, it's been pretty bad for them. They lost pretty badly at Arizona and against Houston. They get to host Cincinnati here. I mean, yeah, it's a game they'll get up for. I mean, do I think they're going to win? No. I mean, I do not. Cincinnati's all the way up from 20.5 to 24 here now. 79% of tickets on them, 90% of the cash on them. So it looks like the money's coming in on Cincinnati. Certainly, I would not want to lay that many points with Cincinnati in a spot where maybe they just kind of get in, get out, take the game lightly. Although I don't think the spot is horrific for them. But yeah, I mean, I would, I guess, slightly lean to taking those points with Oklahoma State, but that's definitely not a strong opinion at all. All right, let's see if I have other opinions here. Washington and Michigan. Surprisingly, this is a non-ranked game. Washington 5-1. Michigan 4-2. Michigan just dropped out of the rankings. I do think Michigan is probably a top 25 team. Their defense is good, and I think Washington actually is pretty close to being one as well. This Washington team is not bad. I mean, their one step-up game, they did lose at home to Ohio State, but that's obviously an acceptable loss. They're going out on the road to Michigan, though, which is not an environment they're used to playing in because Washington is new to the Big Ten. They struggled a bit in their other road game in the Big Ten at Maryland. Didn't really do that well in that when they beat Rutgers last week at home. And now they're zigzagging around, man. They had to fly to Maryland. Short week, they had to come back home, face Rutgers. Thought Rutgers might cover that one and wound up not being able to cover. And then Washington now has to go out to Michigan. Kind of an unfamiliar environment here, man, for Washington to have to go out there. Washington's been good, and their offense has been pretty balanced, passing and rushing with Williams Jr., their quarterback, actually a dual threat too. But Michigan's defense may be able to slow them down. Michigan is coming off that difficult loss to USC, but I don't know, man. Do we consider that to be an embarrassing loss? I don't know. That was a step-up game for them, though, so I don't necessarily love the Michigan side here either. But they are coming back home. And I know they have Michigan State up next, which is usually a rivalry, but Michigan State is so bad right now that I don't really know if that's going to distract Michigan at all. The money is saying Washington in this one, but I'm not sure I agree with that. Michigan down from 6.5 to 4.5 here. 53% of tickets, 61% of the cash coming in on Washington. So the money has driven the line down. It is coming in on Washington. You force me to lean, maybe I will just slightly lean with the market read there because Michigan is coming off that bigger game against USC. It was a game where they stepped up emotionally for it, at least. And Washington had a bit more of a lackluster game against Rutgers. Washington does have an extra day of rest after that, at least. But unfamiliar environment going to Michigan. So I'm going to leave that game alone. I'm not going to want to play that game. Arizona at Houston. I'm going to hit some of these other big conference games. Hopefully this doesn't take too long, but as it always does, and nobody's even watching me now. We're going to go to 2:30 in the morning again. And I'm almost out of cold brew here, and I haven't started brewing anymore, which I don't know if I'm going to because cold brew season is kind of over now. It's getting cool outside. Finally feels like fall, which I like. I like this weather, the fall weather, man. Saab, what's up, man? Thanks for hanging out. Did you take Louisville? Hell yeah. You took Mariners. The Lightning and Blackhawks both lost in OT. That's brutal. The Blackhawks had the 2-0 lead. I thought I was going to get both of my plays today right. That all sucks. That's why I don't parlay, though. Well, I don't know. Are you parlaying Saab or are you making them straight up plays? Because if you had all four of those straight up and you had Louisville with a little bit of action on the money line there and you play, that underdog to win. Maybe you wound up with a slight win today. Although, I don't know, because you might have laid a price on Tampa, though. So, I don't know. I don't know if that wound up being a win or a loss for you on that 2-2, but it would have probably been at least close to an break even. Arizona against Houston here. Arizona's coming off a difficult game, man. Like I said, they had a chance to beat ranked BYU at home, went into 2 overtimes, and lost. And now they have to go out on the road to Houston. Not a great spot, in my opinion, here. It's only their second road game of the season, too. And the last time they went out on the road, they got blown out by Iowa State, who I don't think is as good as their rankings suggested. So Arizona has not been good on the road so far. They haven't done it a lot this year. They're coming off a double OT, kind of barn burner against BYU. So I do not love the spot here for them. Houston coming off an easy win at Oklahoma State, which was that was one of my survivor picks last week. Much better spot for Houston here, in my opinion. I think they will get up for a game like this against Arizona. Houston probably is the team with the better defense. Interestingly, the money's coming in at Arizona, though, and I just don't agree with it. Arizona's flipped from 2.5 to 1, from plus 2.5 to minus 1, 58% of tickets, 77% of the cash on Arizona. So the money has flipped the favor, and it is coming in on Arizona. And yeah, I don't agree with it. I would take the 1 point or whatever with Houston or play Houston on the money line or whatever if I was going to play that one. Straight up 95% of the time. Hell yeah, man. You're a grinder. I like it. Baylor at TCU. Man, we're going to hit a lot of these games here, man. This one, just because it's a Texas matchup here, Baylor's coming off a pretty decent win over Kansas State. And went into a bye after that. So they went into a bye on a good note, winning 2 games in a row. So that bye, I think, comes at a disadvantageous time because when you go into a bye on a good note, again, what do you have to fix? Don't have a whole lot to fix. I don't think they're going to look ahead to Cincinnati, though, even though Cincinnati is ranked. TCU is still a pretty solid team. It's still a big conference game. It's still a big interstate kind of rivalry game. So I don't think they're going to overlook TCU, but that Bye might have been a bit of a momentum stopper for Baylor. TCU coming into this game, they just lost to Kansas State on the road last week. So I think the public's going to look at this and maybe think, oh, well, Baylor beat Kansas State, and now TCU lost to Kansas State. So, of course, Baylor's going to win this game, right? I don't know. I think Baylor, that bye might kind of hurt their momentum a little bit. TCU coming into this one, they didn't have last week off. They had kind of a bad game against Kansas State last week. I know TCU is a one-dimensional offense, so they just throw the football. Baylor's a little bit more balanced, but I will lean to TCU, even though Baylor does have the bye. I think that bye came at a bad time for them, and I still think the transitive, handicappers or the transitive, public, when they look at this game, they're still going to say, hey, because TCU lost to Kansas State and Baylor beat Kansas State, they're going to want to look to take the points with Baylor here, and Baylor kind of the bigger name here as well. I would lean to TCU. They're down to 3 from 3.5. 55% of tickets, 57% of the cash on TCU. So if you do like them, you get a little bit better of the key number there at least. Washington, 9 a.m. body clock start time. That's true, yeah. That is a good point. You're laying Michigan minus 5.5. Kentucky. I'm going to talk about the Kentucky game I already mentioned is going to be one of my plays, so you probably know what it is at that point because we think alike. Well, that's a good point about the body clock. And yeah, Washington, I mentioned that it's a weird travel spot for them as far as, it's an unfamiliar venue. I know they've had a lot of travel this year, yeah, because these stupid conference realignments, I mean, it's just bad, man. It kind of wrecks those teams, but I don't know. I mean, it surprises me kind of that the money's coming in on Washington, but I don't want to lay the points with Michigan. Michigan's traveling back from the Pacific Coast, too, off of a big game at USC. So I don't know. I don't want to do that one. But hopefully you get the win on that one, man, because it doesn't matter to me when it's just a small opinion, right? So hopefully you get the win on that one, man. I'd rather, even though I want to be right about everything, but it'll be better if you make money. That makes me happier than me having a small opinion being correct. So we'll hope that you win that one, man. Let me see. Army and Tulane, somewhat of an interesting game. Tulane coming off that game against ECU where Tulane barely covered the spread there. They have extra time off because that was on Thursday. I think it's more of an interesting spot for Army, though, because Army... Oh, wait, this wasn't the game I was going to talk about. I was going to talk about Navy. I don't know. I was going to talk about one of the service academies that's not Army, but whatever. I'm already talking about it. Army, shorter week, coming up an easier game over Charlotte, but they do have a look ahead maybe to Air Force here. I don't know. I didn't really want to talk about this game because I don't have a strong opinion on it, but the public is coming in on Tulane. I mean, they're a 5-1 team right now with Mensa. Mensa went from them to Duke, right? Who do they? No, Tulane has Retzlaff now, the guy who got kicked out of BYU for having sex. So Tulane, they got a stud quarterback, man. That dude fucks. You know that he does. 82% of tickets, it's confirmed. 82% of tickets, only 80% of the cash on Tulane here, though. Down from minus 10.5 to minus 9.5. Looks like the money's coming in on Army. The only thing I will say is that Tulane, it is revenge for Tulane, I believe, because I believe Army pulled off the upset against them in what was the conference? It was right here. The conference championship game, I'm pretty sure, or was the last game of the season? I forget what it was. I think it was the conference championship, though, because I'm pretty sure I had Tulane in that game, and they just let me down completely in that game. And I think their quarterback maybe got hurt, too. I don't remember, but it was a big game, and Army beat Tulane, so I think it is going to be revenge for Tulane in this one. So that is something to consider here, but the money is fading Tulane, and I'm not quite so sure, although it is a pretty strong market read and fading the public with Army here. Maybe I guess you could argue that maybe Tulane just doesn't defend the triple option well, and they haven't seen it yet this year, so I don't know if that's something to keep in mind. That's a weird game, man. What else do I want to talk about before I switch over? Some of these bigger conference games I'm going to skip. I'm still going to have some plays. Troy at UL Monroe I'll talk about just because it is kind of a lean here. Going to go to over 2 hours in this one, too. Troy's coming off back-to-back overtime games, man. And they've pulled off 3 straight upsets, too. They went on the road to Buffalo. They pulled off an upset in this one as 6.5-point underdogs when the game went off. Then they played South Alabama into overtime and pulled off a small upset in this one at home against a South Alabama team that's kind of struggling this year. Troy was still a 2.5-point dog in that game, even though South Alabama, very bad record. And Troy pulled off the overtime win there. And then last week they went to Texas State, and they were losing this game by a ton. They were losing this game 31-14, although it was only in the second quarter. High-scoring game, but Texas State was a big favorite in this one. They were, 7.5. They opened at 10.5, and they were down to 7.5. Still, Texas State, pretty solid team, and Troy overperformed somehow again, and they wound up winning this game in overtime. Again, just crazy. And if you look at this game, Texas State outgained Troy by over 100 yards, almost 120 yards. So it's not like Troy was even good in that game. And Troy usually kind of recently has kind of played better defense. That was not the case. Texas State put up 574 yards of offense, and Troy somehow was able to still beat them. A lot of it was that Texas State had a ton of penalties, 10 penalties in the game. That certainly didn't help. So Troy's coming off that ridiculous performance there, coming off a bunch of big games like that. And now they got to face UL Monroe, who's not really a team that's going to draw your focus. So they don't really have a look-ahead spot because Louisiana hasn't really been that good either. But UL Monroe, they're a bad team, even though they're 3-3, which is a mediocre record, but still might not be a team that you really look at because their wins are all kind of non-impressive against an FCS St. Francis team. They beat UTEP, who we know is a pretty ugly team, and then they beat Arkansas State, which Arkansas State, very unimpressive as well. So I don't know what to think about that, really. But, yeah, I mean, UL Monroe, Troy's probably going to overlook them a little bit. UL Monroe's coming off another ugly game last year. They lost to a bad Coastal Carolina team on the road, but it was a second straight road game. And they played 4 road games over a span of 5 games, though they did have a couple of byes mixed in there, I think. But I think it's a better spot for UL Monroe here to bounce back here. So that's the way I would lean in this one. Not strong. I don't think it's as strong as the plays that I'm going to have because my plays are basically like we're fading a team in a bad spot and also taking a team that I think is in a good spot more so. But, yeah, I think it's a bad spot for Troy. Somehow the public is taking UL Monroe to the tune of 71%, but I don't know if I would really say they're necessarily a public side because in a game like this, the public's not going to really be playing a Troy-UL Monroe game at all. So I think even some of those tickets, I think, are just professional tickets in this case. So it's something you got to be aware of. It's why you got to look at the discrepancy where you have 71% of tickets, but 87% of the cash is telling you that probably a lot of those tickets are actually professional tickets, and the majority of those professional tickets are UL Monroe in that one. So with all these bigger games on tap, I don't think the public is really getting involved in this game. So it's so UL Monroe isn't exactly like a public side. Troy laying 5.5 on the road there. I would take the points with UL Monroe if I was going to play that one. What else do we want here? SMU and Clemson. Crazy to think about this as a non-ranked matchup here. Clemson, yeah, they've fallen, but they've been pretty good since they had a bye. They bounced back and they slaughtered North Carolina on the road, and then they stomped BC in a game where I thought it was kind of a bad spot for Clemson. I thought they might just kind of overlook BC. They beat them really badly, 41-10. Now they're coming into this game against SMU. I think it might be a big game for both teams, but it might be bigger for SMU, I believe, right? Because this is going to be a revenge game because it's a rematch of the ACC title game last year, and Clemson won that game in a close game, winning by 3. So SMU is going to have this game circled, maybe more so than Clemson does. I mean, Clemson at this point, I don't know, man. I mean, do we think they can make the playoff at all as a two-loss team? Can they make the ACC championship? I don't know. They've started playing better, so they do have momentum. They do have a bye after this. Will they get up for SMU? Maybe, because it is still that rematch. SMU is still, a pretty decent team. They still have the same quarterback from last year, Jenkins. They're at 4-2 right now, which isn't terrible, obviously. They got some momentum, too, with 2 pretty much blowout wins against Syracuse and Stanford. although both at home. And SMU has not been as good on the road. I mean, they had that kind of lackluster game against Missouri State where we got the cover with Missouri State, and that one is 28-point underdogs, I think, and SMU only scored 28 points, and they did lose at TCU, so they haven't exactly been great on the road. I do think they're going to have this game circled, though, because it is the revenge spot. But the money's coming in on Clemson, but here's the problem with this game. So, yes, I think revenge is a huge factor for SMU. They only have 52% of tickets on them, but Clemson has 61% of the cash. And I think part of the reason for that is it's an injured player theory spot. I forgot to mention this, but it's kind of obvious now that Clemson's down from 10.5 to 5. You were going to be able to take 10.5 on SMU, but now it's down to 5. I would not want to look towards SMU now that it's down to 5 because Klubnik is hurt for Clemson. He hurt his leg late in that game, I think, against BC. And this line would indicate that he's probably not playing in this game. So that means it's an injured player spot for Clemson. So Clemson might actually show up for a game like that where they know their quarterback's hurt. So they're going to show up with more intensity in a game like this for that reason. So the cash percentage maybe actually is getting this one right. So maybe that kind of sways you in the direction of Clemson in that one a little bit. I don't love it, though. Charlotte plus the points. I actually agree with that one. I agree with Georgia as well. No, I mean, I would fade UNLV. I'll talk about that game. I hate UNLV, dude. I absolutely hate them. They're not good. They're not going to win against Boise. Boise is definitely the better team, and it's kind of misleading. We'll talk about that game. I think Air Force is going to be the game I was going to talk about in the service academies here. I'm talking about way too many games, of course, but we'll get there. Yeah, so Air Force is coming off back-to-back barn burners on the road against Navy, which is a big game, of course, because that's one of the rivalry games between the armed forces. And then they had that huge game last week against UNLV that landed 51-48. Air Force almost able to pull off an upset as big underdogs in both those games. Now they're coming off those two huge games, and they got to play Wyoming. And up next, they got Army, although it's after a bye, so that kind of negates the look ahead just a little bit, the fact they have a bye after this, and then they play Army. But, of course, Army is the other one of the armed forces games to them, so that is a bigger game. So this is a bad spot for Air Force, man. Almost pulling off those upsets. They do have a good offense. Their defense is bad. Their offense, they can actually throw the ball a little bit. They're certainly running the ball all over the place. Wyoming, I worry about Wyoming a little bit just because they haven't faced a triple option yet this year. I know they do it every year, basically, but are they going to be ready for it? I don't know. Wyoming's coming off a decent win over San Jose State, but it wasn't like a monster win or anything like that. So I'm going to look I'm going to lean to Wyoming in this game. I think it's a pretty bad spot for Air Force here. The money is agreeing on that one. 69% of tickets, only 59% of the cash on Air Force. They're down from 6 to 4.5 here as well, so the line has moved on that. Try to get the 4.5 if you can find it with Wyoming. Not going to be a play for me. The spot for Wyoming, doesn't necessarily seem positive, but it's a bad spot for Air Force for sure. So, yeah. Their offense is great. Yeah, but that's what the public is going to think, that Wyoming can't keep up with Air Force's offense. Wyoming, they kind of ugly up the game, man. So I don't know. It is just a really bad spot for Air Force. So I don't know. I guess, I agree with you. That is a concern, but that alone, is not, some of it is a concern enough that I'm not giving it out as a play. Let's put it that way. But if I was going to play it, I would play Wyoming. I don't think it's, that's one of the ones that's closer to making my card, I would say, the Wyoming side there. I was considering it fairly strong. I think it's sort of a sandwich spot for Air Force in that one. And, of course, the public is going to, basically say Air Force has the better offense, and Wyoming is not going to be able to keep up. That's why the public's going to be on Air Force there. UNLV and Boise State. This is basically the de facto Mountain West Championship game, basically, if you think either one of these teams is going to run the table after this, which I'm not sure, man. I think Boise State is the better team, and they have the better shot to do that than UNLV does. But this is going to be revenge for UNLV, of course, because UNLV lost the Mountain West Championship to Boise last year. They lost both games to Boise last year. So, yes, that is a concern if you do want to lay the points with Boise here. I think I still would if I was going to play the game. I'm not going to give it out as a play, but you got UNLV as a huge public underdog here. By huge, I mean they're getting a lot of points. 58% of the tickets, only 51% of the cash on UNLV. So the public is all over UNLV as an underdog as they see UNLV's undefeated still, and they're getting a shit ton of points. Boise, 4-2 right now, but Boise's laying a ton of points. So the odds makers are telling you what you need to know. They're telling you that Boise is way better than UNLV. They're up from 10.5 to 13, although, of course, in the Mountain West Championship last year, Boise was only like a 4.5-point favorite, although the teams are different personnel-wise this year, but that does tell you that maybe the line's, I don't know, maybe a little bit too high at this point on Boise. As I said, as the number dropped for Louisville tonight between 13 and 10.5, there's not that much of a difference between 13 and 10.5. So, I mean, if you forced me to, I would still lean to laying the points with Boise. Although I think the under is actually worth a look in this game, which I mentioned on my show either yesterday or 2 days ago. I had mentioned the total in this game. The public's going to be on the over in this one because these teams had barn burners in their last game. Boise, 41 points against New Mexico last week, although we know New Mexico not a good team, but Boise putting up some offense. UNLV, 51 points in that game that I just mentioned against Air Force. Absolutely ridiculous. So public's going to go over in this one, and I don't think so. 59% of tickets are on the over, 91% of the cash on the under. The total dropped a little bit from 63 to 62. Not a significant move, really, though 63, I mean, I don't know if when you get into the 60s, I kind of forget what the key numbers really are. But, yeah, I would lean to the under in this game, maybe even more strongly than Boise laying the points, although I would lean to Boise laying the points too still because it's one of those really misleading spreads there. But I think Boise, they're going to try to slow the game down here, man. That's what they do against UNLV. Boise plays better defense too. So, I mean, they're a much, much better defense than, Air Force. Air Force has basically no defense. So UNLV, coming off of that game against Air Force, they're going to have to step way up in class to face Boise State here. And UNLV, they're the running Rebels. They do still run the football too, so I think they're going to try to be running the football as well here. So I think an under is potentially worth a look in that game. Undefeated teams catching way too many points. Yeah, that is it's a spot that pros look for sure. Yep, I agree with that, obviously. I think you weren't here when I talked about the Ole Miss-Georgia game. It's not a play for me, but I do agree with laying the points with Georgia on that one too. Texas Tech, that one. Were you here when I talked about that one? That's just it's a quarterback situation I just don't want to get involved in because Texas Tech looks like they might be in an injured player theory spot, and Arizona State's going to be in a reverse injured player spot with their quarterback coming back. I don't disagree with you on the lean with Arizona State, even despite the contrasting injured player theory spots going on there, but I don't love it. I mean, I'm staying away from that one. But that's just, it's the way that I look. By the way, I forgot to mention, I think I said App State was one of my pick 6 or pick 7s last week. I meant to say Georgia. I said Georgia State, but I meant to say App State. I got it right when I handicapped the game last week. It was a really bad spot for Georgia State last week, so I threw App State in my pick 6, pick 7, whatever. The pick 7, I think, which was the one that I needed an extra pick. So that gave me a win on that one. Because that was one of the ones that almost made my card last week. But I misspoke afterwards and said Georgia State. I meant App State against Georgia State. Old Dominion and James Madison for you, Saab here. This is, this is a big game. This is a conference matchup here. It's a close line. The money is saying James Madison as they're up from 2 to 2.5 with 52% of the cash on them, but 59% of tickets on Old Dominion. Or ODU, as you have Virginians were telling me. Oh, we got to call them ODU and JMU is what they call them in the state of Virginia. ODU is certainly coming off an embarrassing performance, man. So I'm guessing that's why you like ODU here, because that was just embarrassing. They went to Marshall and they lost 48-24 to this Marshall team that's really not very good, and basically had to start over this season after they all left to go to Southern Miss. Probably Old Dominion was looking ahead to James Madison here because this is such a big game. So that kind of explains why they had a really lackluster performance. If you dig into this box score, it was lackluster. They got outgained, but only by 6 yards. But the reason why they lost so badly was 5 turnovers in the game. So you know that means they were just not focused. And you know that they're going to be like drilling this week to fix that shit, because that's fixable, those turnovers like that. I think they got caught looking ahead. It was a very, very bad, unfocused performance from them, where they looked worse than they actually are. But JMU didn't exactly play well last week either, man. They only beat Louisiana at a spot where I liked JMU in that game. My only hesitation was I thought they might look ahead to Old Dominion in this one, because JMU was coming off a really lackluster game, the previous game against Georgia State, and Louisiana, I think, was coming off some sort of barn burner type of game or something against Marshall, maybe even. I don't even know, but I thought it was a spot where James Madison was going to, like, blow them out, and they didn't do it. So it was kind of another bad game for James Madison here, where maybe they were looking ahead, and I think they were kind of unfocused. They were an 18.5-point favorite. They didn't cover. It was a bad game. They actually blew out Louisiana on the stat sheet, 477 to 288 in yards. So they almost outgained them by 200 yards. Still only won the game by 10 because they had 3 turnovers, and they had a shit ton of penalties, 10 penalties in the game. They out first down Louisiana 21-11, and they dominated the possession by 13 minutes too. So that game, JMU played a lot better than it looked in that game. So I could kind of see almost the same argument for both teams in this game, where both teams, I think, were just unfocused last week. And now, you know, they're both going to be focused here. So ODU's coach, who's their coach right now? I don't even know. He's good as an underdog. This one is a tough read for me, man. I know ODU is coming off the more embarrassing game last week, but both of these teams are going to show up. This is a big conference game. It's a game between two teams that are in the same state. I'm going to default to the market read right now and lean to JMU, but it's not a strong opinion. So hopefully you get it right. I mean, it is a low total here. Expecting probably a lot of rushing in this game. Both teams, I think, play pretty decent defense and like to run the football. 65% of tickets on the over. Only 57% of the cash on the over, and the total at 47.5. Possible look towards an under in that game as well, because I think it's going to be a playoff type of atmosphere in that game, to be honest, or something of the sort. So, yeah, I mean, you might get it right. I would slightly lean the other way in that one, but I will root for your bet to win in that one. And then on the other side of things, Texas State coming off a terrible performance, like we said, against Troy. We're going to hit a lot of games, man. We're just talking about all these opinions here. They were a favorite, and they lost that game to Troy. Just an ugly game, man. Now they're going on the road to Marshall. Yeah, it could be maybe a look ahead to JMU coming up next, which is going to be in one of these off-week games. I think it's in 10 days, so it's, they have extra time to prepare for that. So will that be a look-ahead spot to JMU? I don't know. I mean, I think they're going to be angry about that Troy loss and want to bounce back here, whereas Marshall, they're in a bad spot because they pulled off that upset over ODU, a very misleading upset where ODU turned it over 5 times in the game, and Marshall came away looking way better than they actually are. So they might be kind of basking in that. So this is kind of one of those spots I do tend to look for, where you have the better team in Texas State is coming off a very bad performance, and Marshall coming off a performance where they looked way too good. Texas State losing as a favorite, Marshall winning as an underdog. Yet, for some reason, the money's coming in on Marshall, and I don't understand it. I would lean to Texas State in this game. 51% of tickets on them. They've dropped from 3.5 to 2.5, or maybe 3, I guess. So if you like Texas State, you're getting a little bit of a better number on that. 53% of tickets coming in on Marshall. I don't agree. The market might shift by the time the game starts, but I would go Texas State in that game. LSU Vandy under. I could see that. I mean, both teams play pretty decent defense, although I kind of lean to Vandy in the game, though. I think if you like Vandy, it's kind of correlated towards an over, because Vandy is more the offense and LSU is more the defense. But both defenses are actually decent, and it could be kind of a playoff atmosphere. I agree with you on Charlotte, which is going to be a fade of Temple. Temple had two pretty big games in a row here coming out of their bye. I mean, they had a couple of big games going into the bye, but they kind of got blown out by Oklahoma and Georgia Tech. But coming out of that bye, they beat UTSA as a 6.5-point home underdogs. They pulled off an upset there, and then they almost pulled off an upset last week against Navy in a high-scoring barn burner of a game where they lost on a late touchdown. Navy was able to beat them and get the 2-point version for the win right there rather than going into overtime. Navy's still undefeated, and Temple almost pulled off the upset as 10.5-point underdogs. So it's going to be a hangover spot for them coming out of that game, man. And they haven't been good on the road so far, really, although they won at UMass. UMass is terrible. And they got, not blown out, but they lost at Georgia Tech by a decent margin. So, yeah, I mean, going on the road, difficult spot. I just don't know how much I can trust Charlotte. I mean, this Charlotte team, it seems like every time the professionals are coming in on Charlotte, which has been multiple times this year, they just do real bad. So I don't know, but they're coming off of another bad game. It looks like they haven't figured out who the hell their quarterback is. They've had 3 different quarterbacks this year, so I don't love that because when a team has 3 different quarterbacks, that means they don't have a quarterback. If a team has multiple quarterbacks at all, it means they don't have one. So I don't know if I can quite get there. I agree this is a bad spot for Temple, though. Charlotte coming off only scoring 7 points last week against Army. That's pretty ugly as well. Returning home off of back-to-back road losses. So at least they get to come back home here. But Charlotte has not beaten an FBS team yet. Their only win was barely a win against FCS Monmouth by 7. I just don't know if I can trust it. I agree with you on it, though. Temple up from 10.5 to 11. 85% of tickets, only 83% of the cash on Temple. So the money is agreeing with you as well. Saying to take the points with Charlotte. Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree. So, yeah, that's what I'll say about that one, I guess. Man, so many fucking games to talk about. I mean, we're already at 2 hours. Haven't talked about my plays yet. Isn't that just great? Charlotte and Kentucky on the money line. Yeah, I mean, I recommend putting, when it's a spread of double digits, I recommend 97% of the bet on the spread and 3% on the money line is typically what I do. When it's in that like 10 to 15 range, that's kind of what I do. UTSA and North Texas, I'll talk about. It's an interesting game. North Texas had their first loss of the season. A step-up game in primetime, and they just got, I don't know, crushed by South Florida, and it wasn't really that misleading either. A lot of yardage, a lot of points in that game. Sometimes that is the type of game that will hang you over, man. It's a game you get up emotionally for, primetime, big game against South Florida, and you lose that game. Could be potentially a spot where North Texas maybe will lose the game twice or at least not play that well against a UTSA team that's 3-3, but I think they're actually not that bad. They got, Evan McCown, I think is his name. Owen McCown. Sorry, I got that wrong. Evan Owen, same thing. He's one of the McCown's sons, one of the NFL McCowns. Josh McCown's son, maybe. I don't know. I forget. There are too many McCowns. I don't know which is which. But UTSA, they're not really quite as bad, I don't think, as their 3-3 record looks. They lost to Texas A&M, Texas State. Those are decent teams. And then their only really kind of bad loss was that one I mentioned at Temple, which was kind of a close loss. I mean, I don't know. I can't really explain that one. But they're coming off righting the ship after that with a blowout win of Rice last week. Rice sucks, but that was a nice win for them to kind of right the ship. So I think that's kind of a confidence-boosting win. I don't know if they're going to be overconfident because they put up so many points there, but it's still a big game for them going to North Texas. So I would lean to UTSA. I actually think they're a little bit under the radar right now at 3-3. I think UTSA is a little bit better than that. And UTSA, I already mentioned it. The Texas A&M game they lost, but I didn't say I didn't explicitly say. Oh yeah, they actually played fairly well in that game too. Although I think they backdoor covered it, but they still only lost by 18 points on the road at Texas A&M, which is pretty decent. North Texas is public, 56% of tickets on them, 55% of the cash on UTSA. Line has dropped from 5.5 to 4, so the money is agreeing with that, taking the points with UTSA. It's a high total though. In the mid-60s. It has dropped, though, down from 68.5 to 65.5. So money kind of coming in on the under in that one. High total makes me worry a little bit about taking the points, but that's what I would do in that game. You lean that way as well. Saab, yeah, I agree with it. I agree with you and myself. All right, how many more games do we got here to talk about? I like to talk about any of the things that kind of just kind of draw my interest at least. I already talked about these ranked matchups. Mississippi State and Florida, I'll talk about. It's still two SEC teams that I still don't think are that bad. Florida, I mean, they've had a difficult schedule. 3 of their 4 losses are all to really good teams: LSU, Miami, and Texas A&M. That's not easy, and they lost to Texas A&M last week. Kind of a brutal loss, but they were in a letdown spot, kind of, maybe off of that big win against Texas. Maybe they just ran out of gas, having to face another good team 2 weeks in a row. Florida, their rushing attack has not been good, though. Their defense has been all right. Lagway's kind of getting going a little bit, throwing the football. They can't run the football, though. But they're coming off those big ranked matchups, 4 ranked matchups in a row. Now they got Mississippi State coming off all that. I don't know if we could say the letdown happened last week against Texas A&M or not. I mean, Texas A&M did cover against them. Florida lost by 17. Florida goes into a bye after this, and they have their big rivalry game, the world's largest cocktail party or whatever, outdoor cocktail party against Georgia. Huge game, which is always in Jacksonville, I believe, which is the neutral site game, kind of halfway between the two schools. So that's coming up after this. So maybe it's a look-ahead spot a bit as well. I don't think it's that strong of a fade spot for Florida, but that's probably what I would do. Mississippi State's coming off an even uglier performance against Texas A&M, but they had a bye after that. So they went into the bye on the ugliest note where they lost 31-9. And I gave out A&M in that game because Mississippi State had taken Tennessee into overtime the previous week and taken their first loss. So it was a difficult spot for Mississippi State, and it was a positive spot for A&M coming off a lackluster game, I think, against Auburn the week before that. So A&M, they were able to run away with it late and get us to cover in that one. Mississippi State went into a bye, so that will help them because going into a bye on a bad note, you use that bye to fix some things, and they had some things to fix going into that. So I think they will show up for this one. So I will have a slight lean to Mississippi State in that one. The money's agreeing with it, it looks like, with Florida now from 10 to 9.5 now, but 70% of the tickets and 71% of the cash on Mississippi State. The public is actually taking the points with Mississippi State at this point, I think just because their record is better. Florida just getting no respect. Although the odds makers are still lining them as the heavy favorites. The odds makers are still telling you Florida's the better team. So sometimes you look at that, that's like the odds makers are telling you something different than what the records are telling you. So that would sometimes have me looking towards Florida, right? Because you got a 2-4 team laying almost 10 points against a 4-2 team. It's like, well, that doesn't make any sense. The odds makers are telling you Florida's the better team, but the spot isn't that good. So I would lean to Mississippi State just based on the spot, but that's not going to be a play. Penn State at Iowa. I guess we got to talk about it. We're going to go 2.5 hours on this fucking show tonight. Man, the college football show. I don't mess around with the college football show, man. Penn State, what are we going to do with them, man? Are they going to finally show up for a game because they've been embarrassed the last couple of weeks? I mean, the loss to Oregon totally derailed them. They lost to UCLA as 20-whatever point favorites in that game. Just absolutely brutal. And then you'd think they were going to maybe bounce back at home. No, they just lost again last week at home as 20.5 point favorites to Northwestern. Penn State losing back-to-back games as 20-plus point favorites. Absolutely ridiculous. Will they finally bounce back here? I don't know. They go into a bye after this, and they do have Ohio State after this. And Penn State being at 0-3 in conference, they're done. They fired their coach. So when did they fire their coach, actually? That's one thing we need to consider here. When did Franklin get fired? Let me see. Is this the fired coach spot? Hold on. When did it looks like another thing to talk about here is Aller is out for Penn State. He had surgery on a broken ankle, so he's not going to be back either. So we're going to go with whoever their backup is. So wait, did Franklin get fired after they just fired him? All right, so it's a fired coach spot for Penn State. All right, there we go. Thank you, Saab. That's what I thought, but then it was like something going in my head. I'm like, wait a minute, when did they fire him? So we have a few interesting things going on here that kind of would have you leaning Penn State, man. They're coming off another embarrassing loss. They're going to be in an injured player theory spot because their quarterback got hurt. Aller, so he's not going to play. And I don't even think he's very good, so I don't really think it's a downgrade, whoever the hell is coming in. It's not Pribula, who they had last year, because he's on Missouri now. But whoever it is, I don't think it's going to be that much of a downgrade. And they're in the fire coach spot, so that can usually spark a team a little bit. Like I talk about, I think that could spark the team a bit. Coming out of that, because, again, maybe they didn't like Franklin, so maybe they'll play with more effort for whoever is their interim coach here. And because the players just want to prove that it wasn't our fault, it was the coach's fault, and they're going to be coming up. I mean, they're going to be totally embarrassed off of that game, whereas Iowa, they're coming off a 37-0, very satisfying win over Wisconsin. I mean, it is still Penn State, the name, so you got to think maybe Iowa State will still show up for a game against Penn State. So I don't know if I can quite get there with Penn State, but I'm going to lean to Penn State because of all those other reasons, and the money is agreeing with it. I was up a little bit from 3-3 with heavier juice. 60% of tickets on them, 73% of the cash on Penn State. Yeah, I mean, I don't think the market's going to be any lower on Penn State. I mean, what do you think this line was before the season started? Penn State at Iowa. Penn State would have been a favorite of who knows how much, but of course now I know Penn State doesn't have their quarterback now, but how much of a downgrade is that really? I don't know, but I think this is the most value you're going to get on Penn State, and it's a ridiculously low total, down from 39.5, well, it's so up a little bit, to 39.5 juice to the over, but that total is crazy low. A little bit of money coming in on the over, but still, that means taking the points is worth more here. Iowa, I mean, their offense isn't as horrible as it has been in the past. It's a mediocre offense now, but they're still more of a defensive team, laying points here against a Penn State team that you're probably not going to see more value on Penn State than this. So that's the way I would lean. Taking the points with a total that low also makes sense. So that is the way that I would go there. And then I think we just have my plays left now. Finally, we're going to get to just the plays. Just the plays. Let's go. Yeah. I think that's it. So that was a huge rundown, man. Let's go to it. Let's go to the best bets, and then I'll get out of here. Saab, we'll see if you agree with these. We know you agree with one of them because we're on the same side in one of them. All right, let's go. And hopefully these are stronger than all those leans I had because I just gave out a bunch of leans too. First one up, we're going to the MAC. We're going to these under-the-radar games, and we're going to go with Central Michigan plus 3.5. I like how this lines up for both teams in this one. I believe we're also fading the public here. We're getting a little bit less of a line here on this, though. Bowling Green was a 6-point favorite at one point, and now they're down to 3.5. I wouldn't want to take less than 3.5 here, but I think at anything around that, I think at anything 3.5 or higher, I think I would still take. I think it was mostly 4 throughout the week, so I don't really even know when it was 6. I think it was not really 6 for a very long period of time at all. I think it really basically just dropped from 4 to 3.5. Recently, we do see Central Michigan with 72% of the tickets, but I don't think that means they're really public necessarily. I think it just is kind of an indicator that the public isn't really on this game, and the professional money is on Central Michigan because we've seen the line drop. 84% of the cash on Central Michigan, and lo and behold, it is a low total, down from 44 to 43 here. So you're getting more value taking the points here. I like it. We're going to fade Bowling Green in this one too. This one's going to be at noon on CBS Sports, by the way. Bowling Green, I do not like the spot they're in, man. They're coming off an upset of Toledo. And by the way, Bowling Green, I think that was an injured player theory spot too. So we have a lot going for us in this game. Bowling Green lost Pine, their quarterback, and they went with Anderson the third for the rest of that game. And assuming that Pine isn't back, we're going to get the second game. Well, actually, hold on. Let me see. Did Pine go down in this game? Because it might actually be an injured player spot. No, he didn't. They mixed it up with Anderson the third and Garcia the second. The two sons. My two sons. So that was the injured player spot. So I like this even better because Bowling Green, that was their first game with a backup quarterback. And they put in a huge effort and won the game. So now it's a natural letdown after that because now it's going to be it's either going to be the second game without their quarterback, or if Pine comes back, then that means it's going to be the reverse injured player spot, and it means that they're going to maybe take their foot off the gas a little bit. So either way, it's a bad spot for that reason for Bowling Green. So I'm going to lean to Central Michigan either way. regardless of which quarterback it's going to be. But in addition to that, they're in a major letdown spot. They just beat Toledo at home. Toledo was a 10.5-point favorite. Even though Toledo's 3-3 now, and so is Bowling Green, Toledo is the way better of these two teams. Toledo, I still think they're the best team in the MAC, probably. And 10.5-point upset, huge upset for Bowling Green. But look at how this game played out. Bowling Green was down 21-0 right before halftime. They got a touchdown to get some momentum right before halftime on a ridiculous long pass. Came out of halftime and wound up tying the game. Wait a minute. Excuse me. Toledo was winning. What am I saying? Toledo was winning, and then Bowling Green came all the way. I'm all messed up right now. My apologies. And then, Bowling Green came all the way back, roared back, and then actually took the lead, and then wound up winning the game after that. As Toledo, I think Toledo only scored 2 points for the rest of the game after that. That's ridiculous enough. It was a huge upset and a huge comeback for Bowling Green, but it was even more ridiculous. Toledo outgained Bowling Green by 203 yards in the game. So how the fuck did Bowling Green win this game? Toledo outgained them 429-226. They lost the turnover battle by 2-1. But Toledo absolutely dominated them on the stat sheet. I have no clue what happened in this game. It was an extremely misleading result. Toledo had 13 penalties, so that was part of the reason why they had a ton of penalties. And they outgained Bowling Green by 8. They outpossessed them, by 8 minutes, and they had 23-10 in first downs. They had a 23-10 advantage in first downs. So Toledo absolutely dominated Bowling Green. Bowling Green was ass in that game, and they still won the game. So all that leads me to be saying you got to fade Bowling Green here. I know they don't have a big game up next against a terrible Kent State team here, but still, I think it's a very bad spot, and I think it's actually a decent spot for Central Michigan to come in and get something going here, because Central Michigan, they're coming out of a bye, so they had the week off last week, and they went into the bye on a terrible note, losing to Akron. Akron's a terrible team. Central Michigan went into Akron, and Central Michigan was a 6.5-point or 7-point favorite, basically, at Akron. And Central Michigan lost this game outright. So, they're going to be using this bye to fix some things. And this wasn't really much of a misleading result. They actually did get outgained in the game or whatever. It was a close game on the stat sheet, but it was a bad performance. So Central Michigan has a big advantage here coming out of a bye, went into the bye on a really bad note. Yeah, we're going to take the points with Central Michigan in that one. That's play number 1. You're going to add that? Or hell yeah, Saab. Hopefully I'm not misleading you, man. But I think we think the same way. So I think if you had seen it, maybe you would have played it on your own too. Next up, we're going to go with Purdue +3. This is going to be a fade of Northwestern for maybe obvious reasons. Northwestern's down from 3.5 to 3 here. Yeah, it looks like the public's on Purdue. 72% of tickets, 73% of the cash, though, on Purdue. Maybe it's a game where, again, maybe the public's just not really getting involved much in this one. The total's already down from 47.5 to 46, so it's another low total game where taking the points means more. I just like the idea of fading Northwestern in this one, man. I think it's a huge letdown spot. I mean, we know what Northwestern just did. Just ridiculous, monumental win for Northwestern. They went into Happy Valley and they beat Penn State as 20.5-point underdogs. I mean, when does that ever happen? And Northwestern basically didn't even do anything offensively. Stone, their quarterback, had 163 yards of offense through the air, passing, through the air. Whatever. This Northwestern team, I know they're 4-2, but I don't think they're really very good. Just a ridiculous win there. Yeah, they outgained Penn State as well. Penn State, their quarterback got hurt in the game. Penn State, it's a gone year for Penn State at this point, man. So how good is that win? I don't know. But emotionally for Northwestern, getting a win like that for that program is absolutely insane. So they got to be in a letdown spot here. And then who do they play up next? Oh, yeah, they got ranked Nebraska, and then they go into a bye, I guess, and then they have a Friday night primetime matchup against ranked USC, both on the road. So I think this is a sandwich spot. I think they're going to overlook Purdue potentially in this one. And this Northwestern team, I know they're 4-2, but besides that Penn State win, what are their wins? They beat UCLA, and I think that was the fired coach spot for UCLA, where UCLA had their new coach there, and UCLA did at least cover. So that was one of their wins. The UCLA team is still not that good. And then their other wins are against FCS, Western Illinois, and UL Monroe, who's a terrible team. So Northwestern, not really an impressive resume here. Purdue, maybe a little bit under the radar, 2-4 here. I don't think the public is really actually on Purdue here with what we saw with the percentages, because seeing Northwestern beat Penn State and Northwestern better, record by 2 games over Purdue, there's no way the public is actually taking Purdue here. Purdue coming off a game where, they played pretty well as an underdog. And by the way, I didn't realize how lucky I got with Minnesota was one of my survivor picks last week. Purdue was winning this game late in the game, man. They were winning 20-13 in the third quarter. They had a couple of 7-point leads in the game, and then it was tied, and then we had a pick 6 from Minnesota that helped us there. And then Purdue fell short at the end there, almost able to get into the end zone at the end there. And yes, while I know Purdue did play pretty tough as a road underdog there, I know it is a second straight road game for Purdue here, but they're still looking for their first conference win. This is going to be a winnable game for them. So I think they're going to show up for this one. That would be my opinion. I think they're going to still be looking for their first conference win, so they do have reason to still show up. Whereas Northwestern, I think they might just maybe take the game lightly. I mean, Northwestern, I don't think they had any delusions that they were going to be competing for the Big Ten championship or anything like that. I know they're sitting at 1 Big Ten loss right now, but they're not delusional. They're coming off their monumental win, which was basically like their Super Bowl. I think Northwestern basically is like mission accomplished at this point, although I guess their other mission is to make a bowl, but they're probably going to do that anyway. They got to get 2 more wins, although this is one of their more winnable games left, so maybe they will show up for that reason, but I think it's too early to start considering, are they going to get, become bowl eligible or not? So I'm going to go with Purdue in this one. Mostly it's a fate of Northwestern in that one, though. But I like the Purdue side in that one. I just think it's a massive letdown spot. You're afraid about the bad red zone percentage for Purdue, it's the spot is so bad that I think Purdue is worth the play there. Even though like you said, Purdue's offense sucks, but so does Northwestern. So I think if it's a lower scoring game, could be close. My one hesitation is not enough to keep it off my card, but it would be, again, like I said, Purdue just played pretty well as an underdog last time out. But is Minnesota really, are you really going to consider that to be like a huge emotional game, Purdue versus Minnesota? Probably not. So next up, your game and my game, Kentucky plus the points, plus 12.5. We're going to go with this one too. I think it's a huge letdown spot for Texas. I don't get why the money looks like it's on Texas right now, up from 12 to 12.5, because I obviously don't agree with it. We got a low total here, too, and we're getting double-digit points in a low total like this, down from 44 to 43. I like to take the points with a low total, so that's what we're doing here. 69% of tickets, 80% of the cash on Texas for now, but I'm not buying that that's even accurate. Getting the double-digit points in a spot like this, letdown spot for Texas, which I'll talk about in a minute, and the fact that, where are they at? I shouldn't have searched for Texas. I should have searched for Kentucky. Texas has dropped to 21st. I know, or they're back up to 21st. They're actually unranked last week. I know Texas is still underranked. I think they're probably like a top 10 team even because their defense is so good, but their offense is terrible. So that's another thing about this. Arch Manning, I don't think he's the real deal. Texas's offense has been very, very lackluster, which is also going to make it very difficult for them to cover a number like this on the road, even though it is against a bad Kentucky team. Texas, they're in a big letdown spot too, man. I mean, that was the Red River rivalry. Texas, with one loss in the SEC, are they still shooting to make the SEC championship or whatever? Still try to make the playoff? Maybe. But that was a huge win over Oklahoma, man. Riding the ship. It was really kind of their legitimizer game because the other 2 games where they stepped up in class, they lost to Ohio State and Florida. So that was their only big win of the season. So that's a huge game. So I think that puts them in a huge letdown spot here. They do have an SEC team next that's at least doing better in Mississippi State, who I think is 4-2 or something right now. And then Vandy and Georgia. So these remaining games are a lot bigger than this Kentucky team that's sitting at 2-3 and is, I think, they're 0-3 in conference, I think, too. So they're really not going to get, I don't think, a second look from Texas here. And Kentucky's coming out of a bye, and they went into a bye on a bad note. They lost 2 games by 21-plus points against South Carolina and Georgia, both on the road. They're back at home here where they've been better at least. They beat Toledo at home. Toledo's not that bad of a team, and they played Ole Miss tough, even though it was at least a revenge spot, I think, for Ole Miss coming into that one. As I think Kentucky beat Ole Miss last year. So even though Ole Miss, they kind of had that game circled, Kentucky played well in that game against a good Ole Miss team. So Kentucky's been good at home. Had 2 bad road games and went into the bye on a bad note. So I think they're going to use that bye to fix some things, and I think they're going to be focused here. It's Texas coming into their place, still looking to try to get a win. I'm not saying they're going to do that, but I think they'll come within this number, and what I think might be an ugly game on both sides. I know Kentucky's offense isn't very good either. I know maybe part of the reason why they played well in those first 2 games was they had a different quarterback, it looks like, in Calzada, and now they have Boley, but Boley put up better numbers. So I don't know, maybe some of it was in garbage time, I don't know. Kentucky can still run the ball too, though. They weren't able to do it against Georgia, and maybe they won't be able to do it much against Texas, because I know Texas's defense is still good, but generally Kentucky is able to run the ball and play defense, and that is at least what you want getting an underdog here like this. So I think we're going to get that style of game. So yeah, I agree with you. Saab, give me Kentucky. That'll be one of my plays. I like them in the coming out of a bye spot. Maybe you could guess what my last play is. I have one more. I don't know if you can guess what it is or not, because it's a game I haven't talked about yet, and it's not one of the ranked matchups. We're going to go with Syracuse plus 10, although I think maybe the line isn't there anymore. Where's the line at? It's down from 10.5 to 9.5. I know 10 is a key number. I saw it a little bit earlier in the week. I would wait on this just to see if you can still get the 10.5. I don't know if you will, because Pittsburgh's just not that public at 51% of the tickets on them and 80% of the cash coming in on Syracuse. The public's not going to really be heavily invested in this game, so you might not really get that number anymore. And I know this is the highest total that I'm going with here. It's down from 56.5 to 54.5, though, with money on the under. With 90% of tickets on the over and only 80% of cash on the over. So I'm still going to do it with this one. I think it's a spot to fade Pitt. At 9.5, I guess I would still do it, and maybe do it at a smaller, for a smaller amount of money maybe on this one, just because the 10 is a key number, obviously, and you might not be able to get it anymore. Yeah, no one will want Kentucky. I agree with that. Kentucky is a public team for sure. I do think the line is too high. In this game, we're going to fade Pitt. I'm not impressed with Pitt. I don't think Pitt is that good. What has Pitt done so far this season? They're sitting at 4-2. Their one good win was really last week. They played decently against Louisville, who we know is pretty decent. Other than that, what have they really done? Their best win besides Florida State was crushing Boston College, who are terrible. And Pitt lost the backyard brawl at West Virginia. So I don't think this Pitt team is that good. And what did they do last week? They went in and they beat Florida State. And I told you, I thought Florida State was in a bad spot. And I'm not even sure how good Florida State is. Florida State, they opened the season by beating Alabama with their freshman quarterback, Alabama, there. Since then, Florida State has done nothing. They beat East Texas A&M, an FCS team, and Kent State, and blew the doors off them. But those teams are awful. And then they lost that 2 overtime game to Virginia. And they haven't done much since. They played that game competitively. Yeah, Virginia's pretty good. They played fairly competitively against Miami, but a game at home that they probably should have been able to maybe even win that game. They didn't play that well. They didn't even cover. And coming off of those 2 big games, yeah, it was a bad spot. I mentioned it last week. I leaned to Pitt plus the points there, but maybe this Florida State team isn't really that good. They can't really run the football. Castellanos is doing okay at throwing the football, but I don't know, man. Florida State, yeah, they're better than they were last year for sure. Last year they sucked, but at this point, they're not looking like they're that really good team that we thought they were earlier in the season. So yeah, I don't know, man. That Pitt win, maybe not necessarily that great, but it was a big win for Pitt. And it looked good, because they beat a ranked team in Florida State on the road. Florida State's already 0-3 in the ACC, so they're not going anywhere now. Pitt did outgain them in the game. by whatever, 60-something yards, 61, I think. So they did outplay them in the game. It wasn't really a misleading final result, but it was a big win for Pitt. And now they have to go up. Second straight road game after winning huge game in Tallahassee. They got to go up and face Syracuse, who's 1-2 in the conference. And then up next, I know they have another 1-2 conference team in NC State, but at least NC State has a winning record next. I mean, I don't think it's really a look-ahead spot, but I just think it's a big letdown spot for Pittsburgh. So I don't like the spot for Pitt at all here. In Pitt, they switched quarterbacks from Holstein, who wasn't getting the job done, to Heinschel. So, yeah, I know that's something to keep in mind. Heinschel has been good in those last 2 games, so they've been good with him in there. But how good are they really? I mean, you switch your quarterback. I mean, some of it is that the opposing defense just couldn't really prepare for it necessarily because they didn't know what you were going to do with that new quarterback. And some of it kind of like sparks the team a little bit when that new quarterback comes in there. So I don't know, man. Same with Bowling Green. You're talking about Pitt or Syracuse. I mean, you agree with Syracuse? Yeah, I mean, I think one of the concerns is, like, was that actually a huge upgrade from Holstein to Heinschel? I'm not really sure. Holstein did play for Pitt last year quite a bit, and he wasn't that bad. So I don't know. I mean, I played I had plays in a couple of different Pitt games last year, and I did okay in those games. And then we got Syracuse. They're coming out of a bye. So we have 3 of my plays, I think, are teams that are coming out of byes, and they went into the byes on bad notes. Syracuse definitely did. They lost 2 games going into the bye against Duke and SMU, and they lost badly, 38-3 and 31-18. I know Syracuse isn't good. I know their quarterback got hurt in Jelly. How good was he really? I don't know. I mean, he did put up good numbers against UConn and Colgate, but those 2 teams are not good. I know UConn almost beat Syracuse and probably should have because Syracuse isn't that good either. But Syracuse, I mean, they played somewhat competitively against Tennessee, I guess, in the opener. They beat Clemson on the road, which is at least something. But, yeah, then I know they lost their quarterback. They have Collins in there now, but Collins has been okay. I mean, to me, it seems like it didn't really downgrade them that much. But now that they're coming out of a bye, that means they have an extra week to prepare with their new quarterback. He can figure out the system more. I think that helps when you have a new quarterback in there. You get that extra week to prepare. They're going to be at home here. They're going to be looking for a win here against a Pitt team coming into their place. Can fix some things going into that bye on a bad note. So, yeah, that's about it. We're going to go with Syracuse plus the points in that one. And that's it. That's going to do it, man. So those are the 4 plays. One more time. Central Michigan plus 3.5. Purdue plus 3. Kentucky plus 12.5. And Syracuse plus 10, 9.5. I don't know if I might have to grade it at 9.5. I hope not because I was going to take it like a couple days ago when it was 10, 10.5 is when I would have actually taken it if I was still betting right now. So do what you will with that. I would still probably take it at 9.5, maybe just for a little bit less money. That's going to do it. Thanks, Saab, for hanging out, and Jameson earlier in the show. You guys are my only 2. I usually get a lot of people on the Saturday night, on the Friday night, college football show, but not tonight. That's okay. That's going to do it. I'll be back in the morning because we'll talk about baseball and hockey. It never stops, man. It's ridiculous. There's way too much to talk about. That's going to do it. And I don't know what I'm going to do with college basketball and college football. Having to do both like on Friday nights or something. I might have to do the college basketball show earlier or something. I don't know. I got to figure out what I'm going to do when that shit starts. I did college basketball on Saturday mornings last year, which was really ridiculous too. But I got to get some sleep. Peace out, guys. Learn to Toad on Twitter. Learn to Toad on Instagram. Like and subscribe to the channel here, of course. Interact with the YouTube channel. Man, let's pump these numbers up. Better Off Dead. Again, probably have to change the name, get more SEO. I'm on the audio. If you listen on Spotify and Apple, that helps me out as well. Give me a good review, and that helps me out as well over there. Yeah, and Covered in Uke is my Uke project on YouTube. Gotta keep up with that, which I always lag a little bit behind on that. And then we got... what else do I have? A Patreon. Patreon.com/LearnToToad. I'm just spacing at this point. It's way too late. Patreon.com/LearnToToad. And you get some bonus Uke content there. I got something on my black shirt here. I don't even know. What the hell is that? I don't even think it's did I brush my teeth when I got home? Is it toothpaste? I don't even it's cum. No, I don't think it is. I mean, it's definitely not because I just put this shirt on after I took a shower. I think maybe I brushed my teeth. I don't know. Although I'm drinking coffee now. I'm so messed up. I don't even remember what I'm even doing. But that's going to do it, man. Peace out until tomorrow morning. It'll be a shorter show in the morning, though, because I think it'll just be baseball and hockey. So I'll be back then. Peace for now.